Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Night Court. It's nice to be back. Wednesday was a day of just over... of course, my Wi-Fi is messed up. This is great. You know what? Let's just go straight into, until this resolves itself, let's just go straight into the top three for just a moment. Well, congrats to all of you who were in... They wanted to play again. Congrats to all of you in the top three. Let's see, we had Brian Malcolm. I think this is the first time you've been in the top three. Congrats, you get yourself your now you have like a dual-seated throne. So you can always invite a friend. That is always possible. You're more than welcome to. I sure wish that my signal was better right now. Well, sorry, everybody. Oh, boy. Hi, my mom's in here tonight. First time ever. Hello, Miss Linda. I used to know Miss Linda in college, and she was absolutely wonderful. She was fantastic. I loved her to death. Not literally. But hello. Hello, Miss Linda. Let's see. What else we got going? Hello, Eddie. Welcome. Welcome. Hello, Jody. B. Morales, hello. And Ricky Watson, congrats on getting number 3, the beanbag. I don't know if that'll go on your horse, but I mean, you can always try. You can always try. And then Amy H51, congratulations on getting that rocking chair. All right. Hello. You're welcome. Here's to hoping that my... Here's to hoping that my internet decides to behave. I think Brandi has shipped it via portal. Her first primary issue is over. I'm trying to figure out what I can do about this. There shouldn't be a problem. If I remember correctly, I didn't have a problem for a very long time. And so Xfinity is going to hear from my lawyer, which is Mrs. Brucecrime. She's not a lawyer, but yes. So yes, good thoughts. Yes, good thoughts to Sydney, of course. Oh, bless her for driving overnight. I mean, it's a good time to do it, though, if you can do it. I love driving at night. I'm weird. I like driving at night and in the rain, sometimes both. It's fun. Hello, Lois. Hello, hello. Yes, she did. Brandi said she sent me a quick message. She was like, okay, we're ending. Shift to you or shift to RA. RA sent some pokes my way. I was like, send to RA. Send to RA. I'm not starting for another 30 minutes, so please. Absolutely. Let's see. What else y'all got? Snow is fun. Snow is fun. I don't have a ton of bad experience with snow. I don't have great experience with people in my state in snow. That is for sure. They do not know how to. I was once driving on the highway, and it was like a small curve, and this truck came flying by me, and he must have thought, "Well, I weigh enough, I'll be fine." And it went flying by me. By the time I got around the curve, going an appropriate speed for the conditions and the snow on the road, he had spun out and gone right into the ditch. And I felt that karma had spoken that day. Karma had spoken that day for sure. Oh my goodness, my goodness. Um, there's a lot I want to cover tonight. And then of course we've got Jodi, because of course we do, right? Um, there is plenty to talk about. I think what we're going to start out with is we're going to start out with just something silly. Has anybody ever done the Myers-Briggs? Has anybody done that? And if you have, what is your Myers-Briggs type? That's what I'm wondering. This is not true crime related at all, but as you know, Night Court's kind of a variety show more than anything. And so, yes. So I'm wondering if you've ever done Myers-Briggs, and if you have, what was your Myers-Briggs type? That is what I'm wondering at the moment. Eddie, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Yes, Myers-Briggs, the thing that everybody makes you do. The thing about Myers-Briggs is that it's not so much your result, it's how the conversation goes about your result and what happens from there. You can't rely on it the whole time. ISTJ, INFP. If you had to guess what I was, if you're versed in Myers-Briggs, can you guess? That's my next question. It's basically a typology. I'll post a free version that's actually really good. I think it's called from 16personality or something.com. And you can use that. And basically it kind of helps you understand, like, are you introverted or extroverted? Do you make judgments on thinking or feeling? Are you perceiving or judging? And things like that. And so I'll post that somewhere, and you guys are more than welcome to take it. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. It changes over time. Um, it's this is a very neat niche question for sure. Um, yep. So I am an ENFP, which is like it's like Captain, but extroverted. Um, so yeah, it's I can understand how that would be exhausting for sure. Um, absolutely 100%. I'd be interested to see what everybody is in here. But yay ENFPs. And not just that, but like it's scaled. So I'm like 82% extroverted, to no one's surprise at all. So there's not even like a break. Hey, it's my buddy Billy. Billy and I went to college together. I think we've been friends longer than anybody that I've been friends with ever in a day. Billy's my bowling buddy too. You guys know I go bowling. Billy's the person who talked me into bowling. So it's that guy. Everybody say hi to Billy. Still embarrassed by my internet. I will continue to be embarrassed by my internet. Yes, Angie got the right emojis going right now. The bowling. Yes. So yes, because of Billy, I am now 2 bowling balls in and a bunch of other stuff. That's a lot of fun. I love doing it. It's a great break. I'm not embarrassed at all. I love studying that kind of stuff. I love studying lanes and oil patterns and all that kind of thing. The next, so we kind of talked about that. The next thing I wanted to talk about briefly, Wednesday I come across a comment that was on a video, on the video from 3 days ago. Actually, I really think it was on Monday. It was on Monday. And, it briefly got my goat. So I'm just going to have a moment with you all, because I trust you all. And this person's not for night court at all. And I'm not going to say what their name is. If you really want badly enough, you can go look. But this person is the exact reason why I kind of do night court the way that I do it, because I think that you can combine humor and true crime and still be respectful to the victim and the victim's families. This person has indicated that we have certainly not seen the autopsy photos of Travis, and that the antics continuing in the fashion they predict, because they are YouTube God, with all certainty that this program is not going to survive long. It's like oil and water. So, I didn't want to. I wasn't going to talk about this really, but it just kept nagging at me. You can do, and I have for 4 or 5 years. Yes, it has chapped my goat. It has, it's chapped my goat. I, I have, it's yeah, so for 4 or 5 years, I've done podcasting where it is comedy and true crime, and I think that you can balance the 2 out. And on top of that, I always trust you guys to let me know if maybe it went too far. You guys are my gauge. You all are lovely human beings, and so I read the room. I read the room, and I kind of, while I guide the room, I also read the room. And I'm just happy that you guys are here and that you're some of those people that do believe that there can be a balance and still be respectful. Um, People do handle things in different ways. Humor is an okay way to do it. As long as you are not making fun of the victim or the victim's family, friends, significant others, etc. As long as you are not victim blaming, this can be done. And I do night court with throwback trials because we have a good sense of what happens, and it's safer that way to throw comedy into it. So, anyways, that's my shindig. I just wanted to say that. I appreciate the fact that you all are here, and that's not all. That's not going to be this entire show. We're going to continue on like Night Court does, for sure. Correct. Nobody's forced to be here. In fact, they watched it as a replay. So at any point they could have left. She takes the lotion from the basket. It's a different cream. It is. It is a different cream for sure. Not the band. Oh, and about being embarrassed about my internet, you can tell me that for sure, but I will continue to be embarrassed about my internet. Okay. The next thing, also not entirely true crime, but if you saw a post earlier, or you might have seen something from somebody else, 9 years ago we lost Robin Williams, and Robin is one of my acting comedy heroes. And I just love the way that his mind worked, and although it wasn't perfect, and although that might have been the cause, along with other things, he brought joy and laughter to everybody. And he also brought a lot of good ideas and thoughts too. He had his vices. I think a lot of people did and do and will. But he was by far one of the most versatile actors that I've ever seen, because you can go and watch him in Mrs. Doubtfire, and then head over to What Dreams May Come, and then head over to Patch Adams, and then I think it's Night Photo. I'll have to remember that one specifically, but he could do a range of things. And when we lost him, boy, I always said I miss him more than I miss some of my friends. Billy, you're not listening. Shh, not true. But I absolutely love him. And Nanu, yes, Eddie, yes, 1 hour photo. Thank you, thanks, Sam. And so what I did was I collected just a couple of lines. I collected one of my favorite monologues from Dead Poet Society, and I collected 2 quotes from him alone, and I just wanted to read them. I am not fooling and kidding myself to thinking that I could ever ever present these in the way that he could, so I'm not trying to do that. But these things are just important to me to continue on. And hopefully you've seen Dead Poet Society. If you have not, that is by far one of my favorite movies of all time. Yes, Good Will Hunting too. Oh my gosh, such a good film. Such a good film. I just watched screen tests of him as Mrs. Doubtfire today, where they were trying out different makeup and things, and I absolutely loved it so much. It was so good. Jennifer, thank you for gifting a membership. Nina Canadian, you're back. Welcome. Grab yourself some Kool-Aid with a C and an E because of copyright infringement, and pull up your chair with an exclamation point seat. Yes. So, oh gosh, Aladdin, man, the genie is by far my favorite character because of Robin Williams, for sure. And I think he said he recorded like 30 hours of content because they just let him go. I would hate to be the person to have to cut that down. All right, so, it was a run by fruiting. Yes. Oh no. Hi Tash, thanks for showing up though and saying hello. Yes, Brandi was on forever. She sent me a text and she was like, I don't think I can make it to night court. And I was like, please don't. Please don't. You need to rest. It's going to be a series of long days. All right, so I'm just going to read this stuff. So put up with me. This is self-serving, but he also meant a lot to me. So, and I have a story about Robin Williams and my dad in a second here. All right. Deep ripping sentiment. A battle, a war, and the casualties could be your hearts and souls. Armies of academics going forward measuring poetry. No, we will not have that here. No more of Mr. J. Evans Pritchard. Now in my class, you will learn to think for yourselves again. You will learn to savor words and language. No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world. I see that look in Mr. Pitt's eyes. Like 19th century literature has nothing to do with going to business school or medical school, right? Maybe. Mr. Hopkins, you may agree with him, thinking, yes, we should simply study our Mr. Pritchard and learn our rhyme and meter and go quietly about the business of achieving other ambitions. I have a little secret for you. Huddle up, huddle up. We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. Medicine, law, business, engineering. These are all noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists, and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?" Here's something that Robin Williams said. You're standing at a precipice and you look down. There's a voice, and it's a little quiet voice that goes, jump. It's the same voice that goes, just one. It's not caused by anything. It's just there. It's just, it's latent. It lays in wait for the time when you think, it's fine now. I'm okay. And then, beep. And the next thing you know, it's not okay. Yeah, there's a sadness. And then there's also hope. In sadness, it's almost like you wish they hadn't happened, but they did. And the purpose is to make you different. It's that idea of you're back. And you realize that the thing that matters are others, way beyond yourself. Self goes away. Ego, bye-bye. You realize there are a lot of amazing people out there to be grateful for. And other than that, good luck. That's what life's about. All right, here's the last one. And this is a quote from the movie Jack, which I also really love. Please don't worry so much, because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting, and if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky when the stars are strung across the velvety night. And when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day, make a wish and think of me. Make your life spectacular. Oh man. Okay, that was my ode to Robin. Robin is missed greatly. Him and his humor and his mind, which is unlike any that has ever existed. So at a certain point, thank you for humoring me. So at a certain point, my father was working for somebody in a big white house. That tells it. Oh, that's adorable. This is trashy reality TV. Also, give me your internet signal back. I don't know what happened. Yeah, so he was at Camp David, and he was watching. It was the Super Bowl because, when that person travels, he goes too. And so he was sitting watching the Super Bowl. There's a projection screen TV, pretty cool. And so he's watching, and all of a sudden he starts seeing hand puppets, and hand puppets show up on the projection, and he starts hearing voices, and he's like, "What the heck is going on? Come on!" He turns around, and it's Robin Williams, and I wish it was me. And so he and Robin have like a 30-40 minute conversation, and Robin is just so nice. He's so grateful. He's just thankful that he's even there. Just so happy to be there. And it's definitely one of my my favorite stories from him. But just the fact that he kind of, was very grateful versus the whole, like, you should be grateful I'm here. It was very much the opposite with him. And so I was very happy to hear that story. It does my heart good. Does my heart very good. All right. I had an order to things. Yes, this story was brought to my attention today, and I shall share it with you. You may have already seen it. This is funsies. So a mom turns up to jury duty with her 18-month-old triplets and 5-year-old daughter after failing to find childcare. And she's forced to endure a 2-hour nightmare while the kids screamed, threw things, and pooped, because kids are wont to poop. So a mother of 4 was called to jury duty but couldn't find a babysitter. Brought them with her to avoid paying a $1,000 fine. Of course, this was in Utah. So she just showed up. Her husband was busy with work. I probably would have called out, but I don't know what his situation is. But she took them all with her. Her kids' names are adorable: Emery, Lexi, Zoe, and Lincoln. That's adorable. Anyways, she was there they are. Look at that. She was hopeful as soon as the judge saw what she was going through, he would excuse her. But she was kept there the whole time. And so, these are our jurors, right? Look at them playing and screaming and look, jury duty. Ugh. It was rough enough being there by myself. They should have released her immediately. 100%. There is no doubt. Hi, Lynn. You're not late. You're here. That's what's important. They are adorable. Yeah, apparently if you don't show up in Utah, you get $1,000 fine. Although I don't know what the fine. I don't know what it would be here. Actually. Hello. Hi. All right, so I am going to see, did we get an answer? Can I have the stats for the vote? We got a vote. We had a vote. You got a summons for jury duty? Oh boy, you're going to have to regale us with that story, Sandra. I did, but it was like it was like civil stuff, but then they ended up just pushing the trial, and so the judge came out and was like, "I'm so sorry," which I thought that was really nice. He was like, "But nothing's happening today, so you guys can go. Bye." Okay. All right, here we are. So so as you all know, we took a vote. We took a vote on the next trial for night court. Some folks feel like that's how that's going. Billy, I feel like that's how that would be for me too. Although I feel like they would ask me some questions about true crime, and I would probably be kicked off immediately, for sure. Are you in charge of any? Are you? Do you run any podcasts? 3 or 4. You're out. Bye. Can you be impartial? Probably not. Hello. Welcome tonight. The votes are in. They are in. And hopefully I get them soon. If we have to start the trial and then go back, we can. Thank you for updating me. I'm very interested in that. Y'all hear about jury nullification? I don't know why I gave you a southern accent, but that's just the mood that I'm in. Oh, I can bring this up. Oh, shoot. Okay. Yes, please. Cajun's the one with our stats, Cajun Kool-Aid, and I do not want her looking up stats and driving. That would be terrible. Hi. So you all know how I feel about ChatGPT. It's kind of fun, kind of enjoyable. I asked it to write a story. I gave it some stuff. And so let's go ahead and do that while I'm waiting for the stats. What do y'all think? A little bit of an early ChatGPT All right. Here we go. Let's give it a little bit of music, shall we? All right. Yeah, that'll work. Why not? In the sleepy town of Quirkville, where the biggest excitement was usually a cat stuck in a tree, there lived a police officer named Milton Hubble. Milton was the epitome of a bumbling nerd, with his perpetually untied shoelaces, thick glasses that magnified his eyes to comical proportions, and a penchant for getting lost, even with the GPS. While he was genuinely dedicated to his job, his fellow officers often found themselves stifling laughter as they watched him trip over his own feet during the simplest of tasks. One sunny morning, the quiet of Quirkville was shattered by a daring heist at the local museum. The world's rarest collection of rubber duckies had been stolen, and chaos ensued. ChatGPT, we need to talk about what you think is funny. Officers ran in all directions, but Milton, ever the klutz, ended up tangled in the caution tape. Undeterred by his mishap, Milton drove into the investigation with a fervor matched only by his own awkwardness. Now I feel like ChatGPT is attacking me. He examined the crime scene with an intensity that bordered on obsession, inadvertently knocking over a display of antique vases in the process. He interviewed witnesses with his notepad upside down, mixing up their statements and leaving everyone thoroughly confused. Notepads still work if they're upside down. As the days turned into weeks, Milton's fellow officers watched with a mix of pity and amusement. But then something astonishing happened. Milton, in the midst of his chaos, stumbled upon a lead. He followed a trail of breadcrumbs, literally, because he had accidentally spilled his lunch, that led him to a hidden lair beneath the town's abandoned library. In the dimly lit lair, Milton discovered the culprits, a gang of misfit raccoons, led by a particularly clever raccoon named Reggie. They had been stealing the rubber duckies to create the ultimate rubber ducky kingdom deep within the library's catacombs. Milton's triumph was nothing short of spectacular, although it involved him getting stuck in a vent for several hours and having to be rescued by a janitor who couldn't stop laughing. The town hailed him as a hero, and to everyone's disbelief, the crime-solving bumbling nerd became a local legend. Word of Milton's feat spread like wildfire, and even the mayor couldn't ignore the undeniable results. With a mix of astonishment and amusement, the mayor appointed Milton as the new chief of police, citing his uncanny ability to unravel mysteries in the most unconventional of ways. And so, Chief Milton Hubble took the reins of the Corkville Police Department. With his endearing clumsiness, a rubber ducky pinned to his uniform, and a renewed sense of purpose, he led his team to tackle even the quirkiest of crimes. He may have tripped over his own shoelaces along the way, but his determination and unorthodox methods proved time and again that sometimes it takes a bumbling nerd to crack the case and keep a town safe. And that's how Milton Hubble went from stumbling over his own feet to stumbling upon success, all while bringing a dose of hilarity to the world of crime solving. Wow. Wow. All right, Milton. Whenever I hear the name Milton, all I can think of is, I believe you have my stapler. That's all I can think of. Well, so while I'm waiting for the results, let's go ahead and hop into the Jodi Arias trial. See, I've learned. We're going to hop into the Jodi Arias trial. We are on the first or second. Ooh, Milton Berle. That's a good pull. Nicely done. I need my cigar. Hello, French fry. Hello. I am going to take a look here. Y'all are getting kind of a look-see in terms of 17. All right. This is the first video of Cross. We're still working, but here we go.
That a feeling that you experienced before in your life, before Mr. Alexander?
I would say yes, I've experienced it before.
To this degree?
Well, as far as the way he put me on a pedestal, no, not to that degree.
And you say he put you on a pedestal. We talked about it. We talked a little bit this morning about, the bath, the things he did for you. Were there other things you felt like we haven't talked about where he put you on this pedestal?
It was more like the way he would look at me sometimes, compliments he would give me, and sometimes just out of the blue, he would recall something that I did, or a thought he had that day, and usually it was in terms of elevating me above all else kind of thing. And I mean, I didn't really believe it, but I believed that he might believe it. So it made me feel special because he viewed me that way, that I was somebody special.
So in terms of your relationship with Mr. Alexander then, there were times when you were way up here on this pedestal, right?
Yes.
And there were other times you were down on the ground being kicked, right?
Yes.
Stayed.
You were right way up here on this pedestal, right?
Yes.
You were also down on the ground, is that correct?
Yes.
Being kicked?
Yes,
Were you kicked while you were on the ground?
Once I was, yes. One occasion, he kicked me twice.
That's another question before the police. Sustained.
Okay. So we have a relationship with the highs and lots of lows, right?
Yes.
Now, you testified previously that you met Travis in September 2006. You talked about your relationship. You were in a relationship with Mr. Brewer. You talked to us eventually about the time that you became a couple with Mr. Alexander and times when you weren't a couple with Mr. Alexander. Do you recall doing that?
Yes.
Okay. What I want to talk about now is because it may not be clear, and you were asked about, do you recall being asked about after breaking up why you felt like you had permission to be over at his home, that sort of thing? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And in that regard, what was the difference? First starting, say, for example, with the interaction between you and Mr. Alexander, of when you were a couple, by the definitions that you and he had used, as opposed to when you weren't a couple by that same definition.
Pointing as if you can see what I'm pointing at.
Was there a difference in terms of how you interacted with each other?
What I recognize.
As far as, well, in my mind, I drew a distinction. We still continued to be intimate and hang out and go on dates and travel and talk late at night and email and chat and text back and forth. All those things continued, but I drew a distinction in my mind that he's no longer my boyfriend. I'm no longer his girlfriend. We're just maybe going to get back together or maybe not. It was kind of like that. We were in a state of limbo for a while.
You are a meathead.
Well, let's break that down a little bit if we could. You were having a sexual relationship with Mr. Alexander before you became
Larry, Curly, Moe, and
a
Shemp.
couple, correct?
Yes.
And that sexual relationship, that included oral sex?
Yes.
Did it include anal sex before you were a couple?
Just the one time the night I was baptized, and that ended pretty quickly.
Okay. And did it include, vaginal sex?
No.
Okay. So when you became a couple then,
Welcome
did
to the
the
show
sexual
if you're new.
relationship, did that
We go south
somehow automatically change the
As did
sexual
you.
boundaries between the two of you?
No, it didn't really change. We tried to keep the same standards, I guess you could say.
The standards being the law of chastity as told to you by Mr. Alexander, is that right?
Objection. Sustained.
Are we talking about the laws of chastity as told to you by Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
And that standard, to your understanding, what did that prohibit? What act did that prohibit?
It prohibited premarital vaginal sex.
Okay. And
Welcome
you
to the
told us
show.
about the incident where you were sleeping and you woke up with Mr. Alexander's penis inside your vagina. Do you remember telling us about that?
Yes.
Was he your boyfriend at that
Too late.
time?
Yes.
Be quiet.
So you didn't have vaginal intercourse until you were boyfriend and girlfriend, correct? That would have been the first time, so.
Yeah, but it wasn't regular. It was,
Hello, Poppy.
I guess I kind of looked at it as an accident or a mistake, and we didn't do that again until after we broke up.
Hello.
You
Jennifer
say
gifted 5 more memberships. Thank you.
that you saw this first encounter
Welcome
where
to
he was
Jody.
inside your vagina with his penis as an accident
Eddie
or
Jr. J.
mistake.
Thomas.
that right?
Yes.
Haley's Thomas, welcome.
Okay.
Haley's Comet, welcome and welcome back.
How
Thank you.
is
Jennifer.
it that you can rationalize or characterize this invasion in that way?
Hello, everybody.
Objection.
Welcome to the Jody trial
Characterization, invasion, character,
and
rationalize.
night court.
Restate your question.
He places his penis in your vagina when you're asleep, right?
Yes,
And you just told us you wrote that off to a mistake.
that's how I looked at it.
Now, I could drop a pen and it'd be a mistake, but it'd be hard to do what he did as a mistake. So how do you get there
Working
in
nicely.
your mind?
You feel like a tennis ball?
Well, we were sleeping.
Not much
And
at all.
no words were exchanged.
8 minutes.
He, like, all of his motor skills were functioning, but I don't know that if he was really like mentally conscious or not. He was there, he was breathing hard, that kind of thing, but he didn't say anything, and it was never mentioned the next day. So I assumed maybe he wasn't fully aware of what he was doing, because maybe he was groggy or disoriented or still half asleep. I don't know.
Okay.
What, is he Austin Powers? Oh, I fell over. Oh, I fell
Getting
over
back
again.
to the idea of you and Mr. Alexander as a couple and not a couple. You broke up on what date?
June 29th, 2007.
Okay. June, as we've heard though, June 29th, 2007 was not the end of your sexual relationship with him, right?
That's right.
So in that regard, one has to ponder, what did the end of that relationship mean in terms of your relationship with Travis?
It meant to me that we were now two sovereign single adults.
A lot of people,
Single adult.
when they break up, and can you understand that a lot of people, when they break up, that's the end of things. They stop sleeping together, they stop contacting
Happy
each other,
birthday.
right?
Objection, leading comments to other people.
Sustained.
After you broke up, you said, your words sounded more like intergovernmental relations. You said you were both two sovereign states, right?
Objection, leading.
Is that what I heard?
Yes, we were single and free to make our own decisions.
Okay. Single and free to make your own decisions. Yet
Happy birthday anyways.
then, by your
Early,
testimony,
late. Happy birthday.
were still making the decision to engage in sexual relations with Mr. Alexander, correct?
Objection, that's an answer, leading.
Overruled, do the answer.
Way
Yes, I
down
was still
yonder
making
on
that decision.
Chattahoochee.
And you were asked about, well, based on your assessment of this breakup, then, was he, to use your words, as a sovereign state, free to engage in sexual activity with whomever he chose, in your mind?
In my mind, except for the moral implications, I believe that he was free to do that, and it would be something that I shouldn't take offense to, because he's not my boyfriend any longer.
Well,
I don't think she took this as well as she thinks she did.
what about other concerns? What about health concerns? Did you feel like he was obligated to let you know if he engaged in sexual behavior with anyone else because of fear of sexually transmitted diseases?
That was one concern I had, yes.
Did you and he discuss that situation. We're broken up, but we're still going to have sex, but I'm going to let you know if I start with someone else?
There was a conversation somewhat like that, so I assumed he would just tell me if he decided to date somebody else. That's why I asked him when I saw him with that girl, but it wasn't, as far as STDs and that kind of thing, we didn't have a sit-down discussion about it.
Okay. And you mentioned the girl. You're talking about when you went to Mr. Alexander's home, you saw him with this girl through the window,
Yes.
right? And you were asked, why was it okay for you to be there?
It was a lot
After you
different
had
for her
broken
than it
up.
was for
You
me.
recall being
That's
asked
for
that?
sure.
Yes.
Why was it okay for you to be there?
Well, the
Jennifer,
night
thanks
that I
for
went
gifting
there, it
another
was okay
membership.
because he gave me the
Nice
green
luck.
light. I called him
Nice luck.
before going. He said, sure. It was a
Congrats.
very
Welcome back. We're welcome. Lynn, thanks for gifting a
That night
membership.
he encouraged you to
Karma,
come over.
welcome back.
Is that what you're telling us?
He didn't encourage me. He just gave me permission. I needed to get my social security card.
Okay. This issue of this discussion you had with Travis about this girl, were you angry during this discussion?
No. I was actually frightened a little bit.
What do you mean?
I guess frightened isn't the word, but intimidated. I didn't want to be confrontational. I wanted to just throw it out there and let him know it's okay. If you're dating someone, you can let me know. I'm going to be cool about that, but I want to know rather than sticking around and, while he kept giving me intermittent doses of incentive to stay and believe in him, we can just be friends and draw a line right now, and you can have your life and I'll have mine, and it's okay. I just wanted to know, that's all.
You made a comment before we get too far off that and on confrontation. You said you didn't want to be confrontational just a second ago.
Damn, thank you.
You also made the
Molly
comment
Shepherd.
during your time with last week that you weren't allowed to be confrontational with Travis. What do you mean by that?
There were a few times when I asserted myself and he checked it very quickly.
Checked it how?
Usually by verbally snapping back was how it usually went.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
When he snapped back verbally, did this cause fear in you?
At first I felt more like a chastised child. Eventually it began to instill fear and intimidation.
Ms. Arias, before we broke for lunch, we were talking about the discussion you were having with Mr. Alexander after you found him making out with this girl. Do you recall that this morning?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe your words were, in prior testimony, something to the effect that you wanted to understood where you stood in terms of the relationship. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you also mentioned on direct
Her
examination, you
parents
said
have
that he
multiplied. Now the
was
process is
still,
going on.
I believe your word was courting you, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you mean at this time period that Mr. Alexander was still courting you? What do you mean by that?
Well, after we broke up, he promised he would change
it was 2
and,
days total. We're
he
halfway
wanted me to
through the
move
first
down
day.
there, so he paid for me to move down there. And so he would still
Good
take me
question.
out. We'd go on dates and that kind of thing. He wanted to spend his birthday with me. So those are just things that I felt we were kind of just testing the water to see if maybe we could trust each other again or that kind of thing. So when I saw him I mean, I knew we were still like not together, still single, but when I saw him with that girl, I thought maybe I should ask if he is dating someone else and just hasn't told me, or find out what the status
No.
is so that I can find out where
No, you
where I
shouldn't.
stand.
Okay. And this conversation you had with him about questioning him where you stood in the greater scheme of things, that is what led him to run up and beat his head against the wall? Is this the same conversation?
Well, that wasn't the part. It was the part where I reminded him about how he said I could come over last night.
And thank you for the gifted membership.
Like a flash of
Lorraine S.
realization crossed his face.
Welcome
and
to the
I
call.
think he just, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, but I could tell after that part, he changed. He got upset.
Okay. And I'm a little
Don't think we're going
confused
to get to
then
the jury
because
questions. I think there's like 4.5
when you
hours.
went to have a soup pie,
across.
you had told us that, we heard on cross-examination about this backpack and supposedly full of makeup, and that you and Travis were having a fight about that. Do you recall being asked about that on cross-examination?
Yes.
Okay. And the other issue there was that you had told us in prior testimony that there was a fight going on in the bathroom or bedroom bathroom behind closed doors that Mr. Dan Freeman wasn't privy to. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And this argument, if I recall correctly, related to
Sandra,
your
thank you. for the gifted
interaction
membership.
with John Dixon.
Sheila
Is that
says-
correct?
Welcome to the call.
Yes, it did. He read about that interaction in my journal.
Okay. So, and refresh our memory, if you could briefly, what interaction are we talking about?
I went, at one point, it was right before convention, so it would have been maybe late August. I drove out to, I think it was Irvine, and hung out with John. We just hung out, spent the weekend together, traded files, traded music files, movie files,
Okay.
went to the beach, went to dinner, that kind of thing. Watched a movie.
Well, I'm a little confused though. Why was it okay for Travis to be making out with this girl and for you not to be seen or not to hang out with John Dixon?
Well, I was under the impression at the time that it wasn't because I was hanging out with another guy, but because of who the guy was. So that's what I believed then, but the same pattern continued with other guys also.
Okay. And who the guy was is because, at least at this point in time when you were in Irvine with him, he was not a church member. I believe that's what you told us earlier, correct?
He was not a church member. Yes, his grandfather was a member of the church, married outside the church, so his children and grandchildren, which would also be John, were not church members.
Okay. And
None
this
of your
girl
business.
that he was making out with, was her status as a church member ever verified?
I didn't ask.
Nope.
I guess that means no, huh?
No. Yes, that means no.
She's back! She's back!
What's he asking about the?
Approach it. May continue.
This girl that Travis was making out with, was it ever asserted that it was okay, don't worry about it because she's a church member?
No, that was never discussed.
Now, the issue of your sex life with Travis came about in a lot of different ways throughout this case. One of the things that was discussed last week when Mr. Martinez spoke to you is this idea that maybe before he met you, that Mr. Alexander was a virgin. Do you remember being
The
asked about that?
ultimate
Yes.
shade of it all.
Approach, please.
Remind us again, in terms of the sexual behavior you engaged in with Mr. Alexander, what was the first occasion of sexual interaction?
The weekend following convention
Okay, and where did that take place?
at his friend's house in Marietta.
And if I remember correctly, that was oral sex.
Yes.
Subscriber and member are two different things. Subscriber's free. Just hit the subscribe button.
If it's possible for you to make conclusions like this, based on this sexual interaction, were you of the mindset that Mr. Alexander had no sexual experience prior to this encounter?
No, I was not, based on that interaction and other things he told me prior to it.
So he never led you to believe that he was a virgin through his words?
Objection, yes.
No, if anything, he led me to believe the exact opposite.
The exact opposite being what?
He
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
had more sexual partners than I've had, but might have been over a longer range of time.
Okay. You
That's
also
right.
mentioned
Needs to Pop it. Wilmot has two sound effects
somewhere
now.
down the road after that
Could
first
not.
sexual encounter,
Not at it.
let me ask you, the second sexual encounter, that was the oral sex in your car, correct?
That's correct.
Did he do anything during that encounter that led you to believe that maybe this wasn't his first rodeo, so to speak?
Objection. She has already indicated that they already had sex, so, I mean, relevance is the objection.
Approach, please.
Questions, Arias?
Been there, done that. Got the
So-
t-shirt. Kids threw up on it. Had to wash it.
Did he do anything to make you believe that this wasn't his first encounter of this nature?
Yes, he flipped the visor down and angled the mirror so he could have an additional visual vantage point.
Okay. You also mentioned during your testimony that there was a time when Mr. Alexander performed oral sex on you, and your testimony was, I believe, something to the effect that he knew what he was doing. Is that right?
Yes.
And without getting too graphic, if you will, what gave you that impression?
Well, he had bragged about it prior to that, somewhat. That he had studied the female anatomy. And so
Hi, Kathy.
even though I wasn't expecting things to go that far that night, once
Ryan
they
the
did,
host.
it was obvious to me that he knew what he was doing. I mean, I've had other intimate relationships in the past, so I was able to make a comparison in my mind.
Okay. Now, was there ever a point in time that he ever compared your sexual skills with those of other women?
Objection, yes.
Approach, please. Overruled.
Candace, thanks for the gift. Mountain Mama, welcome
Do you
to the
remember the
cult.
question?
Yes.
Grab your Kool-Aid with C
The
and E
answer is
because of
yes.
copyright infringement.
Okay. Yes, meaning
And pull up your chair.
he did compare your sexual skills to those of other women.
Yes.
Objection, that's the answer.
Candace, thank you.
Overruled. That answer will stand.
did he ever compare parts of your anatomy to those of other women?
Objection again, so.
Overruled. You being answer yes or no?
Yes, he does on the sex tape.
That's not how the quote goes. I've got blisters on me lip,
Now,
fingers.
you brought up the sex tape. That's a reference to the phone call you recorded at his behest on May 10th, 2008?
Yes.
Okay.
You, David.
A lot was brought up there, so before we get into that a little more specifically, I want to talk about your prior sexual history, because that was talked about a little bit
I'm gonna
during your
bite my
cross-examination.
pillow.
Do
Is
you
what I'm
remember
gonna
that?
do.
Yes.
One of the issues that came up is your history, if you will, for lack of a better word, with anal sex. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And one of your partners, one of your first relationships, we heard throughout your testimony, was with someone named Bobby Juarez, right?
That's right.
Okay. And in fact, there was a point in time where you were living with him and sexually active with him, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if memory serves, you would have been about 17.
Yes, it was almost 18.
Okay. And he was a few years older than you?
Yes, 3 years older than me.
Okay. One of the things that came up was the idea that you had engaged in anal sex with Mr. Juarez. Do you remember talking about that with Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Okay. In this regard, was this anal sex something you did on a frequent basis with Mr. Juarez?
No, it was something we tried once, maybe twice. I think just once.
Okay, something that you tried once or twice throughout the course of your entire relationship?
Yes.
Okay. And as it relates to Matt McCartney, that would have been your next significant relationship. I believe, if I understood you correctly, you testified that you never had anal sex with Matt McCartney. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as it relates to Mr. Brewer, a 3.5 to 4 year relationship, right?
Yes.
Was there anal sex involved in that relationship?
I want to say one time, I think, maybe twice, but I can only remember one specifically.
So based on that, it was certainly not a regular part of your repertoire with Mr. Brewer, right?
Definitely not.
Okay. And Mr. Brewer would have been the sexual partner that directly preceded Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes.
Okay. So at the time, and just for clarity's sake, you had had these relationships with these men. Are these Mr. Brewer and Mr. Juarez? Are they the only people you ever, prior to Mr. Alexander, had anal intercourse with?
Yes.
So based on what you've told us in your testimony, before you met Travis in your sexual history, you would have had anal sex no more than 4 times. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. Now,
I think she just enjoys being center of attention.
when
Doesn't
you
matter what it's
started
for.
engaging in sexual activity with Mr. Alexander, we've heard how part of that included anal sex, correct?
Yes. Well, not in the beginning.
Right, not the beginning, but we heard about the first
Oh my God, who the hell
of anal
cares?
sex occurring after your baptism, right?
That's right.
Okay. And that was not anything you would ask for, right?
Objection made.
Is that anything you asked for?
No, I didn't ask for that.
Was lubrication used during this encounter?
Not to my knowledge. I think he might have spit on his hand, but I didn't see. I just
Stupid is, stupid does,
kind of
sir.
was going with what I was hearing.
Okay. And you described this
Why is that a detail? that
encounter as
needs to be
being painful
mentioned?
to you, if I recall. Is that right?
Objection made.
Was this a painful encounter for you?
Yes, it was painful that time.
Now, I ask that because one of the things that you talked about with Mr. Martinez is your sex life with Mr. Alexander. And you had said a comment that you enjoyed it, it was mutual. Something to that effect on several different occasions. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Objection relevance as to why he's asking it. He said, I asked this because relevance.
Sustained.
You made comments about enjoying your sex life with Mr. Alexander and saying that it was mutual. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, real fast. We'll just leave it there for a second. All right, I said that I would get the stats, and by that I mean Cajun Kool-Aid, our mod, got the stats for me about the vote. About the vote. It's all about the vote. So to give you an idea, we had over 1,600 votes. That's 1,600 votes. From everywhere from the U.S. to the U.K. to Canada to Bangladesh, Serbia, Puerto Rico, India, Germany. Yes. So the winner of the vote for the next trial is Joel Guy Jr. And so we will be doing Joel Guy Jr. for our next trial. And it's a doozy. It is a doozy. So, that being said, get ready. Feel free to look it up. Yeah, feel free to look it up. It is much different than this one. Much different. And he's another individual who, boy, you love to make fun of. For sure. He's the one, if you remember, I showed you the voting. He's the one who looked like Gru from Despicable Me.
Blah, 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 dee, blah, blah.
A lot of that. Joel, the first one, Joel Guy Jr. So definitely feel free to look it up. Feel free to look it up. Or if you don't want, to know everything that happened, don't look it up. But the reason why I did this was that it gives me a little more time on my end to do a little bit more research and look into it so I can be better ready for questions that you all have. I wasn't exactly ready on all this one. CC, yes, that did happen. Dusty, welcome in.
When you talk about enjoying it, was that physically enjoying it?
Yes, it was physical. Most of the time, yes.
Sometimes or all the time?
Not all the time, but more than sometimes.
There were some instances, though, as you just told us, that it was painful, correct?
Yes.
Okay. that painful interaction on the day of your baptism, was that enjoyable to you? And on any level?
That particular segment was not enjoyable at all.
You also mentioned that there were times, you just testified that there were times that it wasn't, physically pleasurable. On those times when it wasn't physically pleasurable, did you get something else out of it?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
It made me feel good to make him feel good. And also when I was making him feel good, he had all of his attention focused on me. So I feel like it was still, like a trade-off kind of. I mean, like I liked the way I felt when he was focused on me that way. And I liked the way I felt when I could make him feel good, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, let's try to make a little more sense out of that with one of the encounters. You told us that there were occasions when you would come out onto the porch, nude, perform oral sex upon him, and he would ejaculate on your face. You remember
Yes.
telling us about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yes, multiple times. we
Was
heard about
that
it.
physically pleasurable to you?
I wouldn't say there was any physical pleasure that I derived from it.
So talking about what you told us just a moment ago, what kind of pleasure did you get out of it? Is that the pleasure of pleasing him? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, it had been a fantasy he'd had for over a year, that I had known him. And so it was something that we hadn't fulfilled in the past, and we're able to do it now based on the configuration of the porch of the house that I lived in.
Okay. You also, when you were asked about this sex you had with Travis, you made the comment on direct that you felt like a used piece of toilet paper. Do you recall that?
Yes, that was that one time during my baptism.
During your baptism. But there was also kind of maybe not that exact comment, but a similar comment you made when you were driving home from Ehrenberg. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What was your mindset there in terms of the sexual activity?
Well, my mindset didn't really develop until after a few days of him not contacting me or returning any of my attempts to contact him. I drove away kind of with a little bit of a sinking feeling because he wasn't very affectionate when we parted.
I seen him.
Just kind of
I seen it.
blah, just sort of checked out. So I thought maybe he's just tired. And just as the days began to go by, the whole weekend went by and I didn't hear from him until Tuesday night. So by that point I thought that I'd just been really dumb.
And that was, and I think I used the wrong explanation. That I believe you testified to that you felt used like a prostitute on that occasion, right?
It kind of reminded me of that, yes.
But that, you weren't feeling that way while the activity was taking place, but only afterwards when you were driving home. Is that?
Yes, after I just sort of reflected on it and how it all came about.
Okay. Now it seems all this continued sexual interaction after you broke up, and even after in January of 2008, was motivated based on what you've told us on two things. There was a sexual component to it. Is that accurate? A physical component to it, I should say.
Will you start over? I'm sorry.
Sure. The sexual activity you had with Mr. Alexander after you broke up that continued all the way until June 4th, there was a physically gratifying component of that. on most occasions, right?
Yes,
And there was a seemingly always, whether it's physically gratifying to you or not, an emotionally satisfying component to you for making him happy. Is that right?
yes.
Okay. Was there any other reasons why you continued to have sexual relations with him after you broke up?
Well, after I walked in on him,
Jack, she was asked were there any other reasons.
She's explaining the reasons, Judge.
Explain the reasons.
okay. There weren't any other reasons prior to January 21st, 2008, but there were after that. And the
There's
reason
a poll
was
up.
I was under the impression
You want to skip
that
across and move to the jury
he
questions or not?
he felt more satiated and he felt more normal when he had just more adult interactions, if that makes sense.
So there was a component of assistance, if you will, in your sexual activity, assisting Travis.
I would say that. I wasn't looking at it that way, but it was much like that, yes.
Moving ourselves
One
to the
last
tape.
hurrah before jail.
Before we get to the tape, let's talk about some of the text messages without going through the specifics of them, but there was several things were brought up in these
For those
text
of you
messages,
watching,
things
we're doing
that
a poll.
you said.
Do you want to skip across and move to
You
jury
made
questions?
a comment in the text message that you wanted to have sex with him like a horny little schoolgirl. Do you remember being shown that message?
Yes,
And if you could speak up.
yes.
Who cares?
Why would you send a message like that to him? What was the purpose?
The schoolgirl thing was one of his fantasies, and it only shows the two messages, but that was a long thread of back and forth on my way back from Las Vegas while I was driving. And so it just kept escalating, and that's when he sent me another picture of himself, and we just kept trying to top ourselves, so we were trying to get
Yes.
more and more graphic and
I said
explicit.
cross. Yes, it's redirect.
Well,
Got that one mixed up.
in that regard,
I'm
though,
tired.
was that the idea of the schoolgirl in the outfit, was that something that you were interested in, or was it something you were doing to please him?
It would be more for his pleasure, because just being with him was enough for me, but he enjoyed that kind of stuff, so, yeah.
Okay.
40 votes out of 92
So-
people watching. Come on, y'all.
In terms of
You
your
know what you
sex
think.
life prior to Mr.
We're going
Alexander,
to guide this journey.
you didn't dress up as a schoolgirl.
No, I didn't dress up as anything prior to him.
Okay. You also made the comment in some of these text messages that you wanted to give him a blowjob. BJ, which is probably what you put in the text messages. Why did you send him text messages to that effect?
We just had a sex life, and it just kept things interesting.
Okay. Why was it important to you for things to stay interesting?
It depends on the timeline, but I enjoyed spending time with him, and usually the only times
talk
that we
about-
spent together where it was enjoyable was when he was
I don't know.
focused on me in that sort of manner. Usually after that, it would be if we were in public spending time together, we weren't really doing anything or interacting in any sort of pleasant way. And if we were not engaging in intimate things, and we were alone together, then sometimes we were just fighting. So it was more pleasant to be loving, I guess, for lack of a better word.
And it sounds like you engaged in these sexual encounters so you could get love and affection back from Mr. Alexander. Is that what you're telling us?
Objection.
Are you telling us that you were willing to pay this price in order to get this affection from Mr. Alexander?
Objection.
Overruled.
I wouldn't term it like that, but when I did,
Objection will be answered with a question, yes or no, did she?
Thank you.
You wouldn't put it like that. How would you put it?
D,
I
all
would
of
just
the
put
above.
it as
Objection,
spending
all of
time
the
with
above.
him. That's how I looked at it, spending time with him, doing things that he liked to do, where I received a good reaction from him. So in turn, I like to do those
Whatever
things
you
too,
missed.
for those reasons.
If you're eating, you don't want to know.
Okay. In those text messages that you were shown, you also make reference to, wanting a facial, to, his penis being a lollipop. Were you doing that along the same reasons that we were talking about before, to get his approval or to keep it interesting for him?
Objection.
Sustained.
Why did you make comments of that nature in the text messages?
Well, again, with those particular text messages, we were trying to top each other. We kept going back and forth. It got more and more graphic, more and more explicit.
Raising.
And we were trying to just be witty. So every time I topped his comment, he tried to top mine. And it was something that we did back and forth on a few occasions, more than a few occasions, but that was just part of our relationship. So that's how we interacted at times.
Nurmi literally gave you
And you got
a way to explain that away.
reinforcement from those texts as well. Is that
Totally
fair to say?
missed it.
Yes, I did.
All right, I'm gonna give the poll 3 more minutes to go to 10 minutes. So if you
Judge,
haven't
can we
voted in
vote?
the poll, vote.
Gentlemen, please go back to the jury room for a few minutes. Probably will be 10 to 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition. You are excused.
She's a gentleman? Is that like a
Record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue outside the presence of the jury.
The way you know it sounds like you're this 12-year-old girl having her first orgasm. It's
Sounds like what?
12-year.
Are we really doing this again? Are we truly doing this again? We can't do this again. We didn't make it through the first time of this video. We just didn't. Oh my gosh. Nope. Most certainly not. Are we done yet? Nope. This is totally unnecessary. Beyond the scope. I realize that this is a true crime channel, and I realize we talk about a lot of horrible things here. But at a certain point, a line is drawn in the sand. Nope. So I paused. We got less than 1 minute on the votes, the polls, so I'm just going to pause here and we'll make a decision. Oh boy. Yep. It is not an OnlyFans channel. Nobody wants that. Not one person has asked for that in this world. It's beyond my ability. What's the point without the jury? I don't know. That's probably why they played it a second time. Actually, it was probably because it was the call, but they had added the words to it, and so they had to review that before they then played it for the jury. The whole point of this was to I said 10 minutes. The whole point of this was literally to take anything that why am I blanking? Again, I do this all the time. It's all right. Anything prosecution, I don't know why I forget his name. Blocked. Anyways, you guys will remind me in 2 seconds. Was really to take anything prosecution was saying, as in, you did this, 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 and say you did it because you were trying to make him happy. You did it because you were influenced to do that. But it's just one. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Lisa twice. So that's where he's going with this, but it's just unnecessary, I think. I don't think that this was the way to do it. So I am going to follow my heart and the poll, and we're going to move to the jury questions. And I might get judged by it, but I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not really sad about it. Especially if they're going to start playing that kind of stuff all over again. So here we go.
All right, the record will show the presence of the defendant and all counsel. This is the time set to hear objections on the juror questions. The defendant had approximately an hour and a half to review the questions. The state had an hour and 20 minutes to review the questions. Are you prepared to make your...
So whatever questions are asked, she reviewed them and they approved of them. Let's just remember this.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's start. I asked you yesterday if you would identify your objections by the question number. We start at 42. All right, let's hear objections. Who wants to go first?
I'll just list out my objections. And
Okay.
I would object to questions 43, 60.
Okay, hold on. 43,
Uh-huh.
60.
75, and 90.
See, 75 and 90.
And do you want the reasons?
90.
Just
We can save some time with
90.
some of them. 43 and 60 we would agree with.
hold on 1 second. I'm still marking. You're a step ahead of me. All right, so 43, there's no objection? You're both in agreement?
We would object as well, so yes, we're both in agreement.
All right. So I'm going to sustain the objection to juror question 43. It will not be asked. All right. Number 60, what's the defense position?
We would also be objecting to that, so we would agree to the state's
99 juror
objection.
questions, but the truth ain't one.
All right. I'm going to sustain the objection to juror question number 60. Takes us to 75. There are 3 questions on 75.
Remember when we said we loved the idea of jury questions? We're going to see how much we
That
love
question, I
them.
believe, is prefaced to Detective Flores this night. We would object to Ms. Arias being asked that question.
Yes. So question 75 is not an appropriate question for the defendant, so I will sustain the objection to question 75. Now that takes us to 90.
And
Objection.
we have the intent of objecting as well, so we would obviously do that.
Court will sustain the objection to juror question 90. Any other objections from the state to any of the questions?
I have no other objection.
All right, Mr. Nermi.
Attempt to go in numerical order as best I can. Let's see, we dealt with 43. Question
Come here to
50. As to the relevance
State's position.
I believe that it is relevant. They're talking about financial issues and the defendant's surgical procedure.
All right, I'm going to sustain the objection to question 50 on relevance grounds. Right?
Yes, the next in order being the question 55, drawing the court's attention to part 2. What we've interpreted as part 2 of that question. If there's clarification, we can certainly provide that if we have the question, but
So your objection, there's no objection to the first question, there's an objection to the second and third questions?
no, part 2. Well, maybe if we could approach to.
Yes.
Yes, please do.
To questions 2 and 3 on juror question 55 are overruled. Court will ask both questions. Mr. Nurmi?
Question 61.
And your objection?
Is foundation and when the question isn't specific enough.
Overruled. I think that you can inquire about more foundation when you do follow-up. It's clear to
Knife
me
and gun.
that the reference is the June 2008 trip. Why don't you approach, since you don't have copies of the questions? Objection to question 61 is overruled. I will ask that question. Mr. Nurmi.
Number 89.
The sleepy bailiff is back. He is so sleepy. All the time he's sleepy.
State's position.
We had some evidence regarding this issue that was presented, and so I will leave it to your discretion. I do believe that it is appropriate given the evidence that was introduced, but I also understand the 401, 402, and 403 concerns.
I'm going to sustain the objection to question 89 for all of those reasons.
And forgive me, Judge, did we address number 62 yet?
No. All right. Your objection?
The answer necessarily delves into privileged, attorney-client privileged information.
Please approach.
Question 69.
There are 4
Question
questions
69.
on number 69.
Number 2, forgive me, Your Honor, number 2.
I think you need to approach
trust
so
you
that
all.
everyone can actually read the question. All right. It's actually the third question. To be technical, it's actually the fourth, because in the second grouping, there are 2 questions. So it would be the fourth question. I will preface it by adding, to your knowledge. The objection is overruled. Mr. Nurmi.
Number 90.
Judge, you've already.
90 is out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Correct.
Far shorter.
Number 97.
Number one, 21 videos.
Two,
Pretty
97.
sure it's like 22, 23 hours total. So
One to approach counsel.
shorter.
Objection to question 2 on number 97 is overruled. The question will be asked.
Probably won't feel that way when we start.
Number 74.
74.
Have to note the objectionable part as being part 2 of the question.
Approach again, please. 1, the objection is overruled. The question will be asked. Juror question 110.
Secrets don't make friends. Tell us what they
Fourth
are.
question, objection overruled. However, it will be asked in a slightly different fashion than indicated on the juror question. Question 111, the first part, objection overruled. The question will be asked. Juror question 109, the second question, objection
109.
sustained. 7, question number 1, the objection is overruled. The question will be asked. All right, counsel, are there any other objections to these questions?
Number 62. We still have that sheet.
Yes. And I'm going to meet with counsel on that objection. Oh, counsel, one additional. The court will see defense counsel in chambers.
Whoa.
This is the time
Hold the chambers.
set for the court to ask the questions you have submitted. Before I ask your questions, I would like to refer
Mike
you
Levicki
back
is
to your
back.
preliminary jury instructions, page 16. I'm going to read
Everybody turn your
portions
ball.
of that preliminary jury instruction to you. If you have a question about the case for a witness, write it down, but do not sign it. The lawyers and I will discuss the question. The rules of evidence or other rules of law may prevent some questions from being asked. If the rules permit the question and the answer is available, an answer will be given at the earliest opportunity. When we do not ask a question, it is no reflection on the person submitting it. You should attach no significance to the failure to ask a question. I will apply the same legal standards to your questions as I do to the questions asked by the lawyers. If a particular question
No
is
pressure.
not asked, please do not guess why or what the answer might have been. Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
I'm going to ask
No.
the questions in the order they were submitted.
Poor judge.
Did Mr. Alexander pay for a majority of your trips?
No, they were all split 50-50.
If he did pay, was that a factor in you questioning his choices? For example, introduction to others and sleeping arrangements.
He created the itineraries, but I'm not really sure how to answer that. He made all the itineraries for our trips, but we split the cost 50-50, if that makes sense.
Was it his money, his choices?
It was his choices on the church history trips because he knew which places would be significant in the church history. I believe the choices were mutual as far as the list that we were trying to check off for 1,000 places to see. And what was the last
15
part of that
hours.
question?
Was it his money, his choices?
Sometimes it was his money and I would make it up to him through housekeeping. Sometimes it was my money and he would pay me back.
Why did you put the camera in the washer?
I don't have memory of that. I don't know why I would do that.
Did you ever take pictures of yourself after he hit you?
No, I did not.
Why did you call the cops on your ex who shook you, but you never called the cops on Travis?
Well, that was when he tried to break my forearm. We were wrestling. I was trying to get to the phone. It seemed logical to call 911. I never did with Travis because that one prior experience with calling 911, he grabbed the phone out of my hand, hung it up. It was a very negative experience. He told me to shut up. They're going to call back. They did call back. He created an excuse as to why 911 is accidentally dialed. And so after that, I mean, this was years and years later. As far as June 4th, there were no phones upstairs, to my knowledge. And for previous reasons, he would make up for it in ways that Bobby didn't.
What?
Why would you continue to sleep with Travis after you learned of his child porn issues?
That was not a side of Travis that he wanted to even exist. And of course, I didn't want it to exist. He had told me that when he slept with women.
Sustained. Answer the question without referring to a statement.
Okay. I was under the impression that when he was able to sleep with a woman as opposed to fantasizing about a child, he felt like more normal as a man. So also I had seen prior to this incident many beautiful qualities about him and good qualities about him and things that were attractive about him. And I believe this incident was a negative part of himself that he didn't want to foster or that he was fighting or struggling against, and that he ultimately wanted to eradicate.
Why didn't you just change your Gmail password so Travis could not get into it anymore?
It didn't really become a problem right away when we exchanged our passwords, and so it just stayed that way for many months. And after I moved, it became a problem. So eventually I did change my passwords. However,
and if she can't, she
I
says, I don't
noticed it
remember.
because of our text messages and things. It was May 22nd, 2008. We had a conversation, that in my journal entries, I remember. We had a conversation where we decided we're not going to do that anymore. So after that conversation, I made no further attempts to ever log into his accounts. And to my knowledge, I don't think he made any attempts to log into my accounts either.
Did Travis's closet doors have locks on them?
I don't remember them having any locks.
If no, how did you have time to get the gun down if he was right behind you?
I don't know if he was right behind me or not. I just had the sense that he was chasing after me.
Did you record other phone sex conversations?
Yes.
Brian Burns testified that he met you at a PPL event in April 2008 and you had blonde hair. How is that possible if you dyed it in March 2008?
Well, the reason that is the case is because I didn't meet Ryan at convention in April 2008 because convention is not in April, it's in March. So he got the month wrong is all. Convention always occurs in September and 6 months later in March.
Why did you feel so uncomfortable about anal sex with Travis when you had previously tried it?
In my previous relationships, it was only something we tried
The
one time, maybe
ultimate
2 times.
shade
And those were long-term
of it
relationships. The
all.
reason that was not a regular part of the bedroom curriculum was because it was uncomfortable. And with Travis, that was his preference, and that's one of the reasons I got the KY. It made it less uncomfortable, obviously. So that's why it became more regular in our relationship.
And there was much rejoicing.
You took pictures of the shirt and shorts. Did you take pictures of the Spider-Man underwear? If no, why not?
I did not take pictures of those because that's embarrassing, as opposed to the shorts and shirt, which were sentimental to me. I didn't want to memorialize
She put them together.
boys'
She did it.
underwear, and I didn't want people to know that that was a preference of his and that I was dumb enough to go along with that preference.
You told Daryl you wanted to abstain from sex until you were married. If that were the case, why did you have sexual relations with Travis?
Well, my understanding at the time, Daryl and I we were not intimate after convention, and shortly thereafter, the missionaries began to come over to my house and preach about the law of chastity. They didn't overly preach, they mentioned it and explained it briefly. Not in great detail. I wasn't comfortable asking these two young kids that I just met in detail about it. But Travis and I had intimate conversations, and how he explained it to me was that vaginal sex is absolutely off limits and everything else is not as egregious to that law.
Travis stated on the phone sex conversation he did not like Spider-Man. Why did he buy you Spider-Man underwear if he did not like that character?
I don't know why, but they were Spider-Man, and I do know, however, that the year prior,
Yep, make it up. Make it up, Jody.
there was a child he was close with that really liked Spider-Man. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
She did
he was very
not.
much into Spider-Man. He would dress up as Spider-Man. He had the,
She was asked if she knew why.
This is
It's the same.
gross. Gross, Jody. Gross.
Why did you tell Leslie you wanted your kids to play with Travis's kids if you felt Travis was into younger children?
this again is a statement that I made on June 5th. And I wanted to edify Travis only in good ways at that point. I didn't want to say anything bad. Even prior to June 4th, I only would have edified him in a good way rather than saying anything negative about him. I wanted him to be cast in a good light, not a negative light.
If you had bruises that were visible after the April 2008 incident, why is it no one else said anything to you about those bruises?
Well, that's not really true. The same day that the bruises occurred, there was a PPL associate who made a joke about it. It was very embarrassing.
Where are they?
There were people around. We were at a business briefing. He joked about it.
Bring them in.
Travis was in the joke, and I don't know if I got beat red, but it felt like I did. I thought the makeup was covering them sufficiently. And then also Matt was somewhat confrontational about it. And at that point, I was putting more makeup on. I had a foundation cover up, something that was very opaque that I was putting on them from that point on.
If you were so nearsighted, how were you able to drive?
I never had a problem driving. When I was on the freeway, I could see objects. They weren't very sharp.
Y'all, I am extremely nearsighted. I can't see crap without these glasses. There is no way in heck that she could drive if she was as nearsighted as she said she was. I literally see fuzzy figures when I drive if I don't have my glasses on, which I don't. I always have my glasses on. That's ridiculous.
They were sharp enough to where I could see whether or not I was in danger or driving safely or not. As far as freeway signs, I had to get closer to them to actually see what they said. But as far as I knew, that was normal vision. I'd never had glasses my entire life. And in 2010, I put on someone else's just for fun. And it was like, I didn't even know that you could see the world that way. Everything was sharp. So that's when I realized I need glasses.
In Travis's text to Jody, text 12308, exhibit 444, he talks about the mysterious man you've never seen before that wrote for you. Who is this man and why is he bringing it up?
That man would be Steve Carroll. He wrote me a very nice email and it went to my Gmail account, which Travis read. And when I tried to explain myself, I said I've never even met him. And so I guess he thought he was a mysterious man, but I had never met Steve. That's what I told him.
The whole thing
and
already.
it led to a big fight.
Did Travis think it was someone you lied about?
I think he did, the way he postured his words.
Do you want to ask this?
You took a picture of the t-shirt and pink shorts, but not the boys' underwear. Why were the pictures taken so much later?
They were taken in July. I knew my time was winding down. And by that point, I had heard several rumors that said I was obsessed and all these things. And I thought, well, if somebody finds these, it does look a little strange to have a shirt that says Travis Alexander's and Travis is across the seat on the back of these shorts. But
You made
so
it.
I didn't want those to be found. I knew I was going to be arrested. But they were sentimental to me. So I still wanted to memorialize them in some way. So I laid them out and I photographed them because they were special to me.
You
They were special
testified
to her.
that Travis gave
Y'all, if they were so special to her, why did defense, why was it used to indicate that Travis was claiming her? As if it was a bad thing, but if they were special to her, how was it a bad? This is like, I said this before, this is that whole like, One Direction, what makes you beautiful is that you don't know you're beautiful, so I'm going to write a song telling you that you're beautiful, and therefore you're no longer beautiful. What?
you the Book of Mormon at Starbucks. Did you read it thoroughly? If so, when?
I did read the Book of Mormon thoroughly. Following that meeting, I attempted to read one chapter a day. And so I finished it sometime, I think I finished it in about 8 months, more or less. And then thereafter in 2008, I read it, I started January 1st and read one chapter a day, not always consistently, but more or less, or I'd make up for it. And then I did that in 2009 and 10, and I haven't done it since.
Does the Book of Mormon go into detail regarding the vow of chastity?
It doesn't give explicit detail, but it does, and it doesn't even say law of chastity to my recollection. It just talks about, it uses verbiage such as whoredoms, things like that, being unclean, and that's all in reference to sexual sin. So it doesn't go into detail, but it does reference that those things are considered sinful.
Who initiated contact after the various breakups with Bobby, Matt, Daryl, and Travis? Start with Bobby.
Let's see. With Bobby, we broke up and got together so many times, it would be hard to remember exactly what times when. Let's see, I know there was one time where I was packing all of my things and leaving. I was packing all my cars, driving away. He lived in Montague. It's isolated. It's a tiny little town, about 1,000 people. His parents had already left to go into a rest home. He had nothing. He had no food, no money, nothing. So I sort of initiated contact in a way because after I took all my things to my grandmother's house, I went to the grocery store. I bought him a bunch of groceries and I brought them over to his house. And I left them on the door and I left. And he called me back for that. So in a way, I initiated that contact by leaving the groceries on his porch. And he knew it was me because he liked certain types of food and I got him those kinds.
Judge.
Yes.
Excuse me, Your Honor, the hearing device is coming in and out. I want to make sure I hear everything. Could we address that?
Yes, we will address that. It could be part of the issue we were having earlier. We're going to give you another headset. We'll see if that helps. Ms. Arias, I'm going to ask you to move the microphone back just slightly. Back, further back. That might help the issue as well. Sir, can you hear me now?
Don't you think they make any difference?
It doesn't make any difference. All right, we are going to contact someone. So what we'll do is we'll take a recess and attempt to address that issue, and then we'll be back with you shortly. So I'm going to ask the jury to go back to the jury room at this time. Juror 13, thank you for letting us know you could not hear. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I want to make sure that you heard all of the
least he was
testimony
honest.
earlier, Juror 13. Did you let us know immediately when your earphones cut out?
Yes, Your Honor.
So we will proceed then. I'm going to ask the last question again, and I'm going to
Oh,
ask
please do.
Ms. Arias to answer it from the beginning.
Please
Who
do.
initiated contact after the various breakups? With Bobby, Matt, Daryl, and Travis. Begin with Bobby.
With Bobby, we had many breakups and we got back together many times during our 2-year period. And I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the specifics of each time, but it would have been both. I know one particular time when I was moving my things out of the house, I packed everything up and left and put it in my grandma's. This wasn't the time that I found out he was cheating on me. This was another time subsequent to that. And I guess I kind of initiated contact that time because I knew he didn't have a vehicle, money, job, and his parents were already in the rest home by then. So
Margaret.
I went to the grocery store, I bought him some groceries, I left
He's
him on
the
his porch
savior.
so that he could have something to eat. And he called my grandmother's house after that and thanked me. So we
Always
picked up
lowercase
again, sort of.
s, never existed.
We never really stopped contacting each other until we finally stopped for good.
Are you kidding me?
I remember actually when we finally stopped for good, he sent me an email and I did call him back. And that conversation wasn't unfriendly, but it was definitely not a get back together conversation. And that's the last time he and I ever spoke. Let's see. With Matt, we broke up after I sort of confronted him. I went to his dad's house and he was there. He was on the phone with Bianca, so he already knew what I was there to talk about with him. We went into my car to chit chat and discuss this. There were a lot of tears. We knew we were done. We were broken up.
Chit chat.
My heart was broken, and so what I did is I wrote out a long letter to him. Well, it was an email. I typed it out and I sent it to him just so that he would know my heart, where my heart was, my thoughts, and that kind of thing, and where I felt
My
that
heart will go on.
maybe he did err, where I felt he erred. And so that was just, it wasn't like trying to initiate contact again, but I did send him that. That was kind of just my goodbye email. I don't remember how it came about that he ended up coming down to Ventana with me, but I know that he was looking for seasonal work, and the time that he was in Borrego Springs, the weekend or week that I found out about Bianca, that job application did not pan out. So he still needed a job, and he came down to Ventana, and Daryl hired him. As far as Daryl, well, there was really no separation right away, because when I broke up with him, we still had the same house together. We had separate bedrooms, but we would see each other coming and going. We had different work schedules mostly, but typically we both worked at night. So sometimes he was there in the daytime, whether I was at work or not. I had 2 jobs during most of that time. So we never really stopped contacting each other, but we stopped being intimate. And then he moved away in early December. So I think we continued to contact each other for bills. Usually it was him because I didn't have money and I felt bad about that. So generally it was that, but I don't know, I've initiated contact since, like when I stopped by to visit his son and him later on in 2008. As far as Travis, we broke up over the phone on June 29th, 2007. And I don't remember, but I believe he called me the next morning. He was at his friend's, Chris and Sky's house, and he called me the next day, and we just had another conversation. It was kind of less dramatic. It was more just normal conversation, and then it ended up turning sexual. So that proceeded that way. I continue to contact him as well.
How far is Crater Lake from Ashland?
Crater Lake from Ashland, I want to say 70 miles, I'm guessing. I think there's a freeway sign somewhere in that area that says Crater Lake 70 miles, so.
How far is Medford from Crater Lake?
It's a similar distance. There are, if you imagine a triangle, you have Ashland, just north you have Medford, and you can take a highway this way to Crater Lake or a highway this way to Crater Lake, and it's about a similar distance and driving time.
How far is Medford from Ashland?
Medford and Ashland, I'm not sure exact mileage, but it takes 10 to 15 minutes on the freeway.
How did you know Victor's family?
Victor Arias, my ex-boyfriend in Costa Rica, I moved to Costa, well, I didn't move there, but I went there on an exchange program and lived there for a few weeks in the summer. Victor was in that household at the time, and that's how we met, and that's how I knew his family. And when I went back there the second time, it was to spend time with his family. Victor had already moved out and moved on by that point.
Please explain the events again that led up to your dad slapping you during the incident you described earlier.
I'm not clear if that's the one where he knocked me out or the actual slap, but I will describe the one where he slapped me twice. That was, I snuck out of the house when I shouldn't have. We were moving soon. The whole family was moving soon to Wairika. I was very upset about it. Wairika is a small town. When you're going into high school, it just doesn't sound exciting to live there at all. So I was upset, and my friends and I, friends that I had made, we wanted to spend more time together. So I snuck out of the house. We hung out. I don't know what we did. We just hung out. And so sneaking out of the house was against the rules, and my parents found out. I believe they found out because the dog got in because I didn't shut the door all the way and woke them up. And so I don't think they waited up for me because they were asleep when I got back and I went to sleep, and they woke me up around, I don't know what time it was. It was early, very early. And so he asked where I'd been. I think I said, I don't know. And he smacked me. And then he sat me up, asked me again. And I think I said the same answer. He wasn't happy with whatever I'd said, and he smacked me again.
What is your relationship with your mother like today?
It is
How is it,
very
Jody?
complicated, and it's very strained. Her and I, we rub each other the wrong way all day long, but nonetheless, there is a deep love there. I think there are very few individuals that I love as much as I love my mom. So in that regard, because it's strained, it's also very painful, but I love her a lot.
That is not the face of somebody
What
who
is your
feels the same way. Boy, I gotta say this. If I ever saw nonverbals for love, those are it right there. Right there. That's gotta be love. You know what that is? That's contempt. That's disbelief. That's disappointment. That is not love. At all. At all. And her sister is rolling her eyes. So no, not at all. Nope, not a thing. Yes, they are. And the woman who's right over here is chuckling to herself. That's a ridiculous
Relationship with your father like today?
The mom's on the left.
It's not incredibly close, but I have unconditional love for my dad, and I find that I'm able to love him better when we interact a little bit less as opposed to more often.
When you love
because
someone.
I don't know if it's because our personalities don't jive, or I don't know. I think he's kind of a negative person, but maybe it's because I'm negative. I don't know. I'm not trying to blame him, but we get along, and times we don't get along, and the times we don't get along, it hurts me, so I don't like to go there very often.
Would it be possible to have Jodi run through the attack on 6408 using the floor plan Exhibit 249? Valerie, would you take Exhibit 249 and put it on the projector, please? Ms. Arias, will you run through the attack on June 4, 2008 using the floor plan?
Can you move it up to show the shower and the bathroom?
I live
I don't
to
know if it
serve.
focuses out more to show more space. That's actually where you just had it was, well, yeah, maybe right about there. It might have to be moved again because the bathroom is long.
The whole map is this.
Raising.
Yeah, that's good. It'll probably have to be moved up though. Eventually, it starts there.
Let me know.
Okay. It started where Travis was in the shower. I was right outside the shower a few feet. I was taking photos of him, facing him
I
in the
want you
shower.
to draw like Madden.
Back and forth, we would check the photos. Some got deleted because they didn't turn out great, or he was making a wrong expression or something. and then others we kept. And so I would do this and do that, and then we crouched and did the same thing. We tried a few different positions. And then at one point we were deleting, and I went to move again and shift and face him, and the camera, it slipped. It was kind of like, the best I could describe it, like when you go to catch a football, but it bounces and you kind of fumble it a little, because it didn't slip and just drop. It slipped, and I tried to catch it, and it kind of bounced a little and then fell on the ground and bounced and rolled onto the tile. It fell first on the mat, then it rolled right onto the tile. The mat isn't very big. It's just kind of right outside the shower, and then the tile is right outside. So at that point, he got very angry, and he stepped out of the shower. He lifted me up from the crouch position with enough force that my feet came off the ground momentarily, and he body slammed me on the tile. At that point, I rolled and I ran down the hallway, which is where 7 is, goes on there. I'm sorry. Can you, yeah, right there. Yes. I ran down the hallway. I ran into the closet. I slammed the door. I start running. If you are looking at the diagram, it would be on the left side of the seat. I began running that way with my initial intent to probably run out this door. I instead went for the gun. I grabbed the gun. Right about then, Travis was opening the door. I grabbed it. I ran out into the bathroom. He ran, I believe, straight toward the door as well. And can you show the bathroom area again? A little bit more. Yeah. At that point, I had run out of the bathroom, and I turned, and I just wanted him to stop, so I pointed the gun at him, hoping that that would just make him halt.
We all do, Jody.
And it didn't.
We want to make
Instead, he lunged at me right around the time that the gun went off, and I didn't mean for it to go off. We fell with pretty good force down in the corner near 15, but not quite that close. It was kind of near the sink, kind of sort of that area. And he fell kind of on top of me, but to my right. I didn't want him to get on top of me. He was grabbing at my clothes. He was trying to get on top of me. I don't know where the gun went at that point. It was not in my hands anymore.
In the head.
It got knocked out of my hands, or if I dropped it, but I broke away from him. And as soon as the moment I broke away, that's when he threatened my life. I'd have no clear memories after that at all. Things began to get really foggy after the gun went off. And I know he was screaming and cursing. I don't remember exact words except the ones he said to me right after I dropped the camera, which was about a 5-year-old being able to hold a camera better than me, and that I.
Y'all, she shot Travis in the head. If the gun went off and she shot him in the head, and I'm not trying to be blasé about this, how did the rest of this happen? Is it just me who has this question?
I was an idiot, and he was using profanities with those statements.
Regarding the 9mm gun you purchased on July 1st, 2008, you mentioned a camping trip as one of the reasons for the purchase. Who is going on the camping trip?
There was 2 dishwashers from Purple Plum, which is where I had worked in the past, and I was still friends with them. One guy's name was Calvin. I don't remember his last name. He was somebody that I'm trying to remember if Calvin was one of the dishwashers or one of the customers or a former employee, but he was at the restaurant all the time. And then another guy, I don't remember his name, he's very tall. He worked as a dishwasher in the back and a prep cook, and he was going as well, and a few other people were all going. So that's all I can say with that.
Why were you planning on going if you were scared?
I wasn't scared, I was just being cautious. These are people that I knew, but I wasn't very well acquainted with, and I just didn't want to. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it suddenly and not have it, being out in the wilderness. I wasn't scared, I was just being was trying to be cautious. I had seen like a new side of what
isn't that
a man can do, so I wanted to be extra careful as far as being out there alone with a group of men. I think maybe some women were coming too, but I didn't know at that point. I was the only girl on the trip.
Were you paid for the interview with 48 hours?
No, I never asked for compensation. They never offered. There was no
He had
compensation.
it coming.
Were you paid for the interview with Inside Edition?
He did not.
The same, no. I was not paid. Someone encouraged me to ask because she had given an interview to Inside Edition and they paid her $50. She had a charge in New York and they did that. And, but I did not ask and they didn't offer.
In an interview with Detective Flores, Exhibit 503, you talked to him about taking photos of Travis while he was shaving. At some point, you state he must have liked it because he used it on his MySpace page. Can you explain what he used?
Yes, he used the photograph that was displayed yesterday. He used that photo as his profile picture. And what that means is if you type in the URL to his MySpace page, the profile comes up and you can, if it's public, you can see different things about the people or the person whose page it is. If it's private, you don't see those details, but you still see the person's profile picture, and that was his. So that was kind of his photo that represented his MySpace page. There were other photos within photo albums on the account, but the one that comes up on the front page or the main page of his thing was that photo of him shaving. So I assumed he liked it because that's what he was displaying to the world at that point.
You stated that you tried to call Matt and Daryl about your change in plans regarding going to Mesa, but said they did not answer. Why didn't you just leave them messages or text them?
When I called Matt and Daryl, it wasn't really about the change in plans. It was more about, I was trying to see if I left my phone charger there because I couldn't find it anywhere and my battery juice was getting very low. So I definitely wouldn't have told Daryl I'm going to go see Travis because I think that would have been a snub to him. And I was still sensitive to his feelings in that area, nor would I have told Daryl I'm going to go see this guy, Ryan. So I wouldn't have told him either of those. I definitely wouldn't have told Matt that I was going to go see Travis because Matt had very, very negative opinions about Travis and he would have been very against it.
You testified that you reported your cell phone lost in May of 2008. When and where was it found?
Yes, I actually reported it to the Wairika Police Department as stolen, possibly lost. I thought it was stolen because I searched high and low and I left it in my grandfather's vehicle when I ran in to pay for Chinese takeout. And it's in Wairika. I mean, locking the car door isn't a big deal. I didn't think I left it in there, but that was what I concluded when I made the report because it wasn't in my purse. I called it, it didn't ring. I looked everywhere. Was the rest of the question, when was it found?
Yes.
Okay. It was found, to my understanding, in 2010.
That's a hedge.
My aunt found it, actually. She's sitting right over there on the front row. She cleaned out my grandfather's car and found it somewhere in there and turned it over to my grandmother or my parents. I don't know.
Sustained.
She disposed
Have
it?
you taken long trips by
She put it in her
yourself,
father's
such as
car?
the one from California to Arizona to Utah in June of 2008 in the past?
I'm sorry, will you repeat that?
Have you taken long trips by yourself in the past, such as the one from California to Arizona to Utah, the one you took in June of 2008?
Only along highways that I was familiar with, such as from Monterey County to Wairika, or after I became familiar with the drive from Arizona to Southern California. And the Monterey to Wairika drive, I'd probably ridden it with my family over the years, countless times. I could name all the cities, all the landmarks, all those things along the way. I knew where everything was on those roads, and I had experiences in various cities along those roads. So those roads I was familiar with. I've never driven on the I-15, at least for any great distance, and not outside of California.
How often did you take such trips?
Blaming on the
I like to do road trips.
juke
Travis and I
ninjas.
began to do road trips.
How often?
Sustained. How often did you take such trips?
I wouldn't know an exact number.
During the trips you took, did you take extra gas cans with you?
Only after I moved to the desert. Daryl was like, we're from the coast, so we had total shocks to our systems when we experienced our first summer here. And we began to carry cases of water in our trunk. And if we were going long distances, we'd carry a gas can just in case, because he thought, he would be like, you could die out here. You know, if something happens, if your car runs out of gas, you can't turn the air conditioning on, you could literally die of heat stroke, and that was a fear. So we carried water, and we didn't carry gas around with us all the time if we were just hanging around town, but if we went out to 29 Palms or somewhere like that, then that would happen.
They were part-time preppers.
If you took gas cans with you, where did you get them?
I got the two gas cans that I took on that trip, I got from Daryl. And then I bought the third one, and then I determined I didn't need it, and I returned it.
I think the question is referring to in the past, if you took gas cans with you, where did you get them?
Oh, they were Daryl's.
During your testimony, you mentioned Travis had hit your car once. Can you tell us about that incident?
Yes. That was the incident in May 2007. We had spent 2 days at Disneyland and then we were driving from Anaheim to Los Angeles, where the Getty Center is, because the Getty Center is on the list. That was our purpose for going. And on the way there was a ton of traffic. I don't remember if it was 5 lanes or 6 lanes, but it was bumper to bumper. Not any of the lanes were moving at all, hardly. We would just inch along. And he grew very frustrated, very impatient, and angry. And he began I don't want to say what he said, but he just began yelling at other drivers, and
why not?
They weren't aware of him at all doing that, but he was just screaming at the other drivers. He was beating on the steering wheel. He would beat the inside of the door, the driver's side door, just with his fist, or the horns were on the side, so he wasn't honking the horn, but he would beat the center of the steering wheel.
Why did you confront Travis after seeing him with another woman through his backyard window, if it was not due to jealousy?
I felt that because he was making an effort. This was also right after we had just
Qualifiers.
Slept together consensually.
Answer
He
the
went all the
question.
way, and he said, I love you, and all these things. So I felt like we were getting back together. And when I saw that, it seemed in contrast to what he had been telling me for the last month and a half. So my intention was to go there and just find out what's the deal.
She was asking, she wasn't jealous. Why did she confront him?
I'm explaining why I went over there.
You may continue.
So my intention of going over there was not out of jealousy, but it was because I wanted to know where I stood. Are we still trying this? Do you have a new girlfriend? If you had a girlfriend, that was fine. I just wanted to know. Was all.
If you simply wanted to know where you stood because he was courting you back, why were you so upset that you needed to call your father about the incident the next day?
I didn't want to call my father. I wanted to call my sister, my little sister, because her and I talk. We're relatively close, and
the one who was dumb?
Like that. It's a girl thing. So I called my parents' home because she lived there at the time, and she wasn't home, but my dad answered, and he could tell that maybe I was sad. So that's why I began to talk to him. The reason I was sad was because Travis and I were getting back together.
Sustained. You mentioned an earlier failed attempt using rope during a sexual encounter. Can you tell us what happened that day, when this occurred, and how Travis handled the failure?
I didn't hear that. Judge, can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
I thought that last question said, why were you so upset that you had to call your father? So I began to explain why I was upset.
All right. Your attorney will have an opportunity to follow up with you later.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned an earlier failed attempt using rope during a sexual encounter. Can you tell us what happened that day when this occurred and how Travis handled the failure?
Yes. He handled it just fine. He didn't get upset. We just stopped. He used twine, and it was very scratchy, and it sort of was not cutting into my wrist, but it was abrasive, and it was somewhat painful. So at that point, he just cut the twine off with a knife as well.
Did Travis's dog usually bark when someone came into the house?
And I'm so happy
Yes, if
about
the
it.
dog heard the door open, he was very animated, and he would bark very loud.
Did the dog usually bark with loud, unexplained noises?
Typically only if the doorbell rang or somebody knocked at the front door.
Why would you continue to stay with someone who had sex with you while you were sleeping?
At that point,
Didn't
that
think
would
of
have
this
been
answer,
May
did ya?
2007. I was in love with Travis. I knew I was in love with him, and it didn't make a difference to me, honestly. I was in love with him. My only concern was that I believed from a religious and spiritual perspective that our relationship would not be blessed if we acted that way. So, as in vaginal sex, that was my belief at the time.
When did you find out that Travis had a gun?
I found out in the fall 2007 when I was cleaning his shelves. I had different projects, and it was around the fall. I don't remember if it was in October or November, but it was around that time.
To your knowledge, did police ever find your grandfather's gun that was stolen?
To my knowledge, no, none of the property that was stolen from that house was recovered ever.
Why did you place Travis's body back in the shower?
I could only speculate because I don't remember. And I could speculate based on who I know that I am or thought I was. Should I?
Sustained, so don't answer the question. Do you know what time you left Travis's house on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember the exact time, but as far as the daytime,
Sustained. What happened to the clothes you were wearing on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember.
I don't
I was in
remember.
clothes when I came to, and I don't.
Objection, speculation,
Sustained. You say Travis had attacked you before June 4, 2008, but would apologize to you after he did it. So why was the June 4, 2008 incident so different?
June 4th was
Oh.
escalated, and he
Oh.
always apologized afterward prior occasions. On prior occasions, I'd never feared for my life. And even when he was choking me out and I was losing consciousness, I didn't have enough time to fear for my life. I passed out. It wasn't until after that incident, when I reflected back on it, that I realized I could have died. And if he could take it that far, and he was as angry as he was, and I perceived very clearly that he was trying to get back on top of me again, that freaked me out. I was scared out of my mind.
Shot him.
You and Travis continued to talk on the phone after you moved back to Wairika, including phone sex. Would it be fair to say you were upset he was taking another woman to Cancun?
Quickly, I think that last question and that answer, which was a horrible answer, honestly, for me, if I wasn't already convinced that, yeah, I mean, you have to be crazy not to be, but like that's a linchpin answer. It is a crap answer, like entirely. That would have been the one that swayed the. That would have been the one for me.
No, I was not upset. I wasn't upset at all, actually. Cancun was long, it was announced a year before. He was taking a babysitter, I thought. I didn't learn that he was taking Mimi Hall until well afterwards.
Objection, no, she's going beyond the fact she was.
Sustained.
That's her being angry.
Why did you
Is that
send
her
his
not being
grandmother
frustrated or
flowers?
jealous?
In retrospect, it probably wasn't a good idea, but I felt that it would be more insensitive to not do it, anything at all.
Why did you take the rope and
What?
gun with you?
There were a lot of actions I took that day that I don't remember. But as far as disposing of it,
Objection, speculation.
I knew that something bad had happened, and I knew that I felt like I had done something wrong.
Okay, I know I keep pausing it, but here's the thing. They asked her if she was jealous because of Cancun, right? And so She said no. And then she went on to say, I thought it was the babysitter, but I didn't learn until close to they were leaving that it was somebody else. That sounds to me like jealousy. Gonna toss that out there. And then yeah, I think he's the husband of one of the sisters. I could have that wrong. But I think he might be the husband of the sister on his left. So hopefully that's right.
Did you lock Travis's bedroom door when you left on June 4, 2008?
Ooh, I don't remember.
I don't remember anything of that nature, that whole time gap. I don't know.
Did you try and clean up the scene after you left on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember.
Based on the evidence, I believe I did. Maybe make some kind of attempt, but I don't recall doing that.
If you climbed on the shelf to grab the gun in a hurry, how is it that nothing was disorganized in Travis's closet?
I only had to step on the edge with my foot. I put up 1 foot. I only had to well, it's the shelf, so I just had to grip the edge and grab it.
We had this conversation. You all know exactly what those shelves were like. They had little inserts on either side. If you step on the edge of that shelf, it's going to flip. It's absolutely going to flip. I've had books fall that way just by putting something wrong. Not cool. This is ridiculous. This is utterly
So
ridiculous.
it's not quite as tall as it appeared in the photo. You just put 1 foot up on the edge, grab the other. You're up like 2 or 3 feet extra already. I grabbed the gun with my right hand, I believe. I don't know, right or left, probably right. And then I ran out the door.
She remembers.
If you shot Travis first, how did the casing land on blood?
I don't believe it landed on blood when the gunshot went off.
She's asking a question to ask.
Overruled. You may continue.
I do know that we struggled, so something could have happened subsequent to that, but to my knowledge, there was no blood in that bathroom before the gunshot went off.
After you shot Travis, why not run out of the house to get away?
Initially, that was my attempt. That's why I started running down the hall. The bedroom doors were closed.
Speculation. I thought she said after she shot her, she didn't remember.
No, I said it got foggy
Yep.
after the shot.
Overruled. You may continue.
Oh,
Maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought that it was after I got body slammed. Is that?
After you shot Travis, why not run out of the house to get away?
after you shot
Okay.
Travis.
I'm sorry, that is correct. After I shot him, I didn't know that I shot him, but after the gun went off, while he was lunging at me, we fell over and he was trying to get on top of me. It's hard to describe the fear. It was like mortal terror. It really was. When he was trying to get on top of me, I thought he was, and then he threatened my life. I really thought he had intentions to kill me. So I don't remember
You on drugs?
any specifics of what happened right after that point.
Why didn't you call 911?
I was very scared of what would happen to me, I was scared at that point of what was going to happen. I mean, I knew that, well, I felt that I had done something wrong, and I don't have really an adequate explanation for my state of mind following that. I just know that I knew something really bad had happened, and I was scared.
If Travis attacked you on June 4th, why not just tell the police the truth from the start?
That one's kind of a complicated answer. I didn't want
Why? You lied.
I didn't want people to know the kinds of things that were going on in our relationship. I felt that if I told police Travis attacked me, I would have to give explanation as to why he attacked me. And if I gave explanation as to why, I would have to go back through the different incidents that we'd gone through and how those things didn't really begin until after I walked in on him. I believe they were related, and I didn't ever want to go there. So
instead, I told a bunch of lies until I could come up with one that included all of these things that aren't true to begin with and drag him through the mud. What? This is the reasoning of little bruise crime. Why?
It was all
Because
convoluted, and I thought that by saying that would open the door to that, to that, to that. And I didn't want to de-edify him. I didn't want...
too late.
I was embarrassed about a lot of those things, and I was ashamed. And I was also very scared about, whether I was defending myself or not, I felt like I felt like it was wrong to kill somebody regardless of the circumstances.
Were you kneeling when you dropped the camera?
Yes, I was kneeling on one knee, I think.
When Travis stepped out of the shower to attack you, was he wet?
Yes.
Okay,
If so,
I'm
did
wrong.
he slip at all on the tile in the
Pleasure to be
bathroom or hallway?
There's your answer.
I didn't see him, but the tile is slick when it's wet.
When entering the closet, why didn't you just go up in the door closest to you?
My intention was not to run into the closet. When I rolled away, my intention was to run out of the room. I didn't make the decision to go into the closet until I realized that by going left, I kind of just went back to that brief moment when he caught my wrist last time. I intended to run left. And this time I would have to open the door. It would swing open this way. As I was running down I would have to go this way. I would come down the hallway. The door would open this way. I would have to go out this way. So it just seemed this door over here was open. It split-second decision. It just seemed safer or easier or faster to run in there and slam the door. And then I knew there was an exit. It wasn't a dead end. So there was another door there that I could run out of.
Do you know how tall the ceiling in Travis's closet was?
No.
Was the gun in a case or just laying on the shelf?
I don't remember how it was on June 4th. When I first discovered it, I don't recall seeing a holster of any kind, but Travis did have one for it. I don't remember on June 4th.
Why is it that you have no memory of stabbing Travis?
I can't really explain why my mind did what it did. Maybe because it's too horrible. I don't know. I really don't know the answer as to why I blacked out or have memory gaps that much of that day.
Whether you had plans to commit suicide or not, why even mention no jury will ever convict me, mark my words, because I am innocent in the interview?
Well, I was very confident that no jury would convict me because I was going to be dead. As far as saying I'm innocent, definitely innocent of my charge was what I meant. And also I assumed that I would be in the next life where I believe that, God is the ultimate judge, that he would understand the circumstances of that day and that it would ultimately, that he would know all of the circumstances that happened that day. So in that regard, innocent of the charge, but definitely there wouldn't be a conviction because you don't convict a dead person. I would be in the grave at that point.
In your interviews you gave on TV, were you forced to answer all of the questions they asked you?
I was not physically forced,
Everything she
but
wanted.
when you put on the spot, it kind of feels like it, like you kind of, for some reason I felt like I had to answer every question, but I wasn't forced, if that makes sense.
Say no.
You have pictures of your other finger injuries that include timestamps. Do you have any pictures of your finger injury with timestamps?
I guess that would be the left finger. I didn't take a specific picture showing the injury, but any picture taken subsequent to June 22nd would show my ring finger bent, whether it was like that one in the photo or anywhere else.
Do you have any pictures of you wearing a finger splint?
No, definitely not.
Did anyone see you wearing a finger splint?
I wore it one day when I was working at Mimi's Cafe, but I don't know if anyone commented on it or not. So it was kind of embarrassing because it was a.
Saw it, not whether anybody commented.
Sustained. When did you realize that you had memory loss? The approximate date?
If that's a reference to June 4th, when I pulled over in the car and I began searching around for the water, the shoes, everything, just trying to clean myself up and then that kind of thing. I can attribute it to being maybe, I had memory loss one time when I was 19 because it was alcohol related, and one time when I was 15 because it's alcohol related. So that's the only other thing I can attribute it to.
You ever notice people like to talk about God mostly when they're using it
like a blackout
by hate?
So that was when shortly thereafter, when I couldn't remember certain things. Some things have come back to me since, but just not all of it.
Did you have an attorney prior to the interview with CBS?
Not for my case. I had an attorney for the limited purpose of assisting me in my extradition from California.
Is that a yes or no?
Sustained, yes or no?
Yes, sort of, I guess.
You said you got the 2 gas cans so that you could fill up in Nevada or Utah where gas was cheaper than California. Why did you fill the gas cans up in Pasadena?
Yes, that's why I initially got the gas cans from Daryl, was so that I could save money on gas and that kind of thing. I'm a coupon clipper, that kind of person. But when I got to Southern California and realized I'm taking the I-15 across 2.5 states, I've never driven this before. It's the middle of the night. I'm by myself. I'm in a car that I'm not very familiar with. I didn't want to be stuck in the dark somewhere in the desert. I've heard lots of horror stories, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't stranded.
Well,
In all of the 3-hour church sessions, family home evenings, missionary discussions, and other church events, you were never told or were never under the impression that other forms of sexual intercourse, oral and anal, were forbidden.
I did get that impression on a few occasions, and I discussed it with Travis, and he clarified it for me in his way.
Objection is the letter she got it from these occasions, not when she spoke with the victim.
Sustained. Is the answer yes?
Somewhat, yes, but it wasn't clear.
Did you know that Travis did not like John Dixon prior to your date with John Dixon?
Prior to my first date with him, no, I didn't even know. I don't think he even knew John Dixon. Maybe I'd seen him through prepaid legal, but prior to that date, no. And I'm talking about before Travis and I became boyfriend, girlfriend. As far as the date that occurred after we broke up, I knew that he didn't care for John Dixon.
Why were you willing to get involved with 2 men at the same time?
Well, I was trying to it was very difficult to break away from Travis. I knew we were going in separate directions, but we kept continuing with the same habits that we had.
Your journal says you didn't.
I had said before that I'm monogamous, and by that I do mean sexually monogamous for sure. I've never had more than one partner at the same time in that regard.
Make sure it's a mark.
So as far as Ryan, he was just a potential person that I wanted to get to know. And if things had gone further, then I definitely would have cut off that sort of contact with Travis.
When you were asked about the video you made having sex with Travis on June 4, 2008, you said you used your camera. But when you were asked about your camera later, you said you didn't take it out of the car that day. Which of these 2 is true?
For clarification, both is true. Both are true. The Canon stayed in the vehicle. My Olympus was tiny and it was always in my purse. So it went in, and the Olympus is Stylus 500 model, I think. And it had video and on it. The Canon did not.
When you realized that you did not connect like you expected, why did you continue to speak to Travis?
I think that's a reference to Ehrenberg because we weren't connecting the way we had before. Travis and I connected very well over the phone. It seemed like it was more of an emotional and mental sort of connection, a meeting of minds, so to speak. And I was not going to contact him again after 3 failed attempts over the weekend, and then I didn't hear from him. So when he called me Tuesday and left me a very sweet voicemail, it kind of was a feeling of relief, like, oh, okay, I wasn't just being used. He still cares. So I called back, and he was somewhat remorseful that we had gone that long without talking, and we agreed to not do that again. I mean, as far as going that long without communication.
What is your understanding of the word skank?
I don't know an official definition, but it's a very negative and pejorative, derogative term against women.
Why did you share housing with Matt at the time you were in a relationship with Travis?
Well, the reason I moved to Big Sur, Matt was the available housing in Big Sur. And Matt, by this point, had reached.
Available housing.
Was it why?
Overruled. You may continue.
Okay. The reason I felt comfortable living with Matt was because at that point in time, this was, I want to say 7 years after we'd broken up, our friendship had evolved to a point where we were like more like a brother-sister kind of relationship. There was no attraction, zero. We didn't even hug. It was just, we were just friends, and we were more like siblings. And I think Travis understood that. I don't know.
Sustained. Were there any girls working with you that you could share a room with?
At Ventana, no, there were not.
How can you be a sister to Matt, someone you had sex with in the past?
It does sound strange, but it just has to do with the way our friendship evolved after the breakup. I got over what he did with Bianca, and that resentment melted away and gave way to sort of just a genuine goodwill toward him and him toward me. Also, our time at Ventana was broken up because when at one point, I think I'd mentioned on direct that the restaurant at Ventana closed. And so the entire dining operation was moved over to the inn, and we operated out of there. During that 5-week period that the restaurant was being remodeled, Matt moved to Vail, Colorado. I didn't see him for 6 or 7 or 8 months. He had another relationship at that time. And by the time he moved back, Daryl and I had started a relationship. And at first it was a little bit awkward, but then Matt and I realized we just jive in a certain way, but it's more like we're better off friends rather than boyfriend, girlfriend. And that was a place where we reached an acceptance, and there was no longer an attraction to Matt. I think it was more, I was blinded by love, and now I saw all his other qualities. I still liked him as a person, but I was not attracted to him, if that makes sense.
Why didn't you read the Book of Mormon to see what you were and were not allowed to do?
I did read the Book of Mormon. There is additional doctrine that explains the commandments a lot more, called the Doctrine and Covenants. And the Book of Mormon does cover a lot of the basics. It's very similar to the Bible in some of those things, like the Beatitudes are sort of reworded in one portion of it. I think the 10 Commandments are sort of reworded in some portion of it, but it's more the Doctrine and Covenants that go into detail, and also subsequent presidencies that the church has gone through have clarified even more what certain commandments mean, what that really entails, such as the word of wisdom. When the Doctrine and Covenants was written in the 1800s, it doesn't say anything about coffee, tea, alcohol, or illegal drugs. It mentions hot drinks and tobacco. And more clarification was given in the 20th century. And so it's kind of like that. Like, I did read the Book of Mormon, but it's not ultra specific.
Why did you ask Travis about everything you did?
About everything I did? I don't understand that question.
All right, then we'll move on to the next one. Why did you start a relationship with Ryan Burns when you said earlier, when I am with one guy, I don't see other guys?
Well, I didn't consider myself Travis's girlfriend because I broke up with him on June 29th of the previous year. Also, I moved over 1,000 miles to get away from him. And so even though it was hard to break up, so to speak, we were broken up, but we still continued some of the same patterns we had. I was still attempting to move on, maybe not making the best attempt, but when somebody introduced us through text message, we began to call and just sort of hit it off. We were just talking friends, and it was only a potential thing. So I didn't consider myself seeing Ryan or seeing Travis, but Travis was still the person that I was most intimate with.
Why is it that you cannot remember when Travis lent you money, but you remember the exact amount that you lent him all 3 times?
I do remember times he lent me money. I think I went into a few of those times. And one of the reasons I specifically remember amounts that he lent me is because it's documented in my journal, and I've since reread that journal several times.
Why did you think that the incident that happened on June 4, 2008 was any different from the ones before, so that you had to kill him to protect yourself?
Shade of it all.
June 4th was very different in that even though I thought he would never get that way again, because it just, like, I think he scared himself when I passed out based on our subsequent conversations, and we realized how far it went. I thought that it was done at that point as far as violence goes. So when it happened again, and I realized how far it can escalate when he gets that angry, I was terrified this time, especially because he was trying to get on top of me. And also, he just kept coming. He didn't stop. Even when I tried to stop him by running away or pointing a weapon at him, he kept coming, and he just did not stop.
You mentioned injuries that would not have been seen by others when you were in Utah in June of 2008. Can you go into detail as to where they were and how you received them?
Yes, my ankles were bleeding, not profusely, but they were scratched and they were injured. I had socks and shoes on. Also, when I hit the tile, the back of my head right here slammed on the tile.
What?
And I do have, my shoulder's never been the same, but I don't know if it's related to being slammed on the tile or not.
What?
It's off, is all I can say. It hurts constantly, actually.
When you injured yourself at Casa Ramos, rotating the glasses, did your supervisor have you fill out any forms to document the injury for workers' compensation purposes?
No, this was a small business operation. They didn't have formalities like forms and that kind of thing, just what was minimally required as far as being a legal documented worker. It was a less formal, it wasn't a corporate kind of setting.
Wait, I'm going to go back. Hold on, wait a second. My HR brain is...
It was a small business operation. They didn't have formalities like forms and that kind of thing.
Workers' compensation purposes.
No, this was a small business operation. They didn't have formalities like forms and that kind of thing, just what was minimally required as far as being a legal documented worker. It was a less formal, it wasn't a corporate kind of setting where those kind of formalities were done.
Who was the...
As a general rule, a business with more than 2 employees is required to carry workers' compensation coverage. An employee is viewed broadly under workers' compensation law and includes part-time, seasonal, temporary workers, minors, trainees, immigrants, working family members.
The main factor in your decision to move from Big Sur / Palm Desert to Mesa, Travis or Rachel?
It was Travis, ultimately.
You testified that you thought you heard his footsteps. If you weren't sure, why didn't you just run downstairs and out the door?
It was all a split-second decision, but like I had said, when I got toward the carpet area, that's where he caught my wrist before when I began running down that hallway on a previous occasion. And so here I am running away from him down the hallway again. And on the previous occasion, my intention was to run out of the room, and I didn't make it out of the room. So rather than try to this time open the door and run out of the room, this closet door was open and I knew there was another exit. So I just ran into that as quickly as I could.
Why would you take the time to delete the photos off the camera after you killed Travis?
I don't remember.
That would go with all the other things that I did that day. When things happened, I don't have memory of it, specific memory of it at all. But, I mean, I could.
Objection. She's very speculative.
Sustained. You stated you remember dropping the knife and hearing it hit the tile. What happened to the knife after that?
I don't recall what specifically happened right after that. I just know that it didn't go with me in the car.
I'm going to check speculation. She has to realize.
Sustained. If your phone had died while at Travis's, why not use a wall charger so you would have it charged before you got on the road?
That was a thought of mine, but Travis did not have a wall charger that had a plug that fit my type of phone. So I was not able to charge it there either.
In your email to Travis after June 4, 2008, you told him you would sleep in his bed while he was in Cancun. Did you ever stay overnight at his house without him there?
Yes, when I was pet sitting Napoleon, I did that.
How is it that you were so calm on the television interviews?
I tried very hard to present the best image I could, and I had had a lot of prior experience of pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. Everything on the surface was okay when really it wasn't. I was accustomed to that, and also I wanted to portray that I'm confident and that I'm okay, I didn't do this, no worries. That's what I really wanted to get across at that time. And then I wanted to kill myself so that I would never have to own up to it.
You stated in the 48 Hours interview that Travis's family deserved to know the truth. If you really believed that, why didn't you confess then?
That was not entirely true in that I didn't want them to know certain truths. And again, I said that because it's a derivative of my attempt to deny that I had anything to do with it.
If Travis wanted the phone sex conversations recorded, why didn't he record them?
His phone did not have that capability, neither did mine until I bought the Helio, or until Gus got me the Helio. I discovered that feature and we joked back and forth about it, and then I began to record them when we decided we would do that. His phone didn't have recording capability.
If you didn't want to be tied up to a tree, why would you go up and look for a place where he could do that?
It wasn't being tied to the tree that I was looking for. We were looking for a place out in the woods, nature, to somehow carry out this Little Red Riding Hood fantasy. And my understanding of that is that it would involve sex. But he had many other ideas, as you heard on the tape. It didn't necessarily mean that I was going to go for all those. I was kind of pushing my own limits anyway by going out to the woods to find a spot. And that was the purpose, was for that fantasy, but not specifically getting tied to a tree.
If you drop the camera on the bath mat, how is it that it rolled all the way in front of the bathtub?
On the diagram, it looks very far, but it's really a distance of this. You have the shower, there's a very thin wall, and then the bathtub begins right here. So wherever I was standing here, it didn't have to roll. It just bounced right off the mat, and it's not way down by the bathroom area, but it's right near the bathtub at that point. There's only a distance of about this much between the shower and the bathtub.
On the phone sex tape, when Travis was talking about photos and taking video, was that all part of his fantasy?
Check, please.
Taking photos and video, yes, that was a fantasy that he hoped to realize.
Did you ever voice any concern to Travis about being uncomfortable with some of his sexual fantasies?
Yes, there was one fantasy that he wanted to do, which was pulling off on the side of a freeway
Okay.
exit and having sex on the hood of a car. And I told him that that would be impossible. I couldn't even think of an exit in rural Northern California where that could be accomplished and nobody would see us. So that, and I was a little uncomfortable with the Mile High.
Two things. One, she just said she didn't want to drag his name through the mud. And so she could have just said yes, end of story. But no, we've got to detail this out. Two, she said no to this one because she couldn't find an exit that was quiet enough. Not because just no, but because she couldn't find a quiet enough exit.
Thing that he wanted to do because the flight attendants tend to monitor who's going and coming from the bathroom, and they don't allow two people in the bathroom at once. So just those two that I recall.
Why didn't you call Ryan and tell him you were going to Arizona when you decided you were going to Arizona?
I guess I didn't want Ryan to know that I still had the interest that I had in Travis. It would be kind of just the way I didn't want Travis to know that, but for different reasons, that I was interested in Ryan. I kind of felt like, how would it sound if I called up this guy that I'm going to go meet and say, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my
109.
ex-boyfriend for a little while. Sorry.
3 days.
I didn't feel,
questions. This is day one.
I didn't feel comfortable or like that was
We'll
something
finish
that
day
I
one.
would have done, is say, let him know I'm going to go hang out with my ex and then I'll swing by and meet you or something. It was a bad decision, but I made a lot of bad decisions when it came to Travis.
You have testified to many different occasions where you performed sexual favors with Travis to keep him pleased and happy. Are you saying you never got pleasure out of sex with Travis?
Definitely not. I did. Many occasions he was very romantic, very loving, and I guess you could say attentive, and he cared about my pleasure as well. Not always, but there were times when we were very compatible in that regard.
Why would you continue to carry your journals around with you if it was possible others, including Travis, might find them and read them?
To my knowledge, no one else read my journals. And then once I
Everybody
discovered that
has.
Travis did, I was a little more guarded about it, but I kept my journal inside my purse, and my purse zipped up, and nobody really went through my purse, so I considered it safe in my purse because nobody got into my purse except me, typically.
Why were the laws of attraction so important to follow, but the law of chastity was not?
See, that
I
was the
believed
problem.
that
The
I was
chastity belt
following the law
around
of
her purse.
chastity
People couldn't get in
for
the
a long
purse.
time. I realize now that I was
Not what it
not.
was for.
The law of attraction was also a huge philosophy of mine. It was my second religion, pretty much. Also, with the law of chastity and what it prohibits, there is a great deal of temptation when I would hang out with Travis. And even though we eventually did begin to, under how I understood it, openly violate the law of chastity, it was kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's hard to describe. I mean, I think it was temptation, it was weakness, it was not that I didn't believe in the law of chastity, but when it came to Travis, that was more important.
Do the laws of attraction also apply to recording phone sex conversations?
The law of attraction? I guess it could be construed that way, in that when we were doing those things, I got positive, I had positive interaction with Travis. He wasn't angry, he was complimentary, he would say things that were in a complimentary way. He would be nice to me. And so it was the
life
attention that I
is
craved. And the
bigger.
law of attraction does state that you focus more on the qualities of the person that you like and don't focus on the qualities that you don't like. And so when we were doing those things, we were both focused on each other in maybe not a spiritually positive way, but in a way that made
That's
me
a
feel
very
good
toxic
and
way to look at
him as
things.
well.
Is it not? Is it not? Like, focus on the things you like and don't focus on the things you don't like. If you don't focus on any, like, you need a balance here, do you not? Like, you're not trying to fix the other person, but you do need to work with that person so that they're not constantly doing the things over and over again that you don't like. Like, is this not, is it just me? I just feel like totally ignoring the things you don't like is one, sacrificing a whole part of yourself, which is not good because you end up resenting the person for it. And two, you need to talk to them. So, I mean, I'm not Dr. Phil, not even Dr. Phil's a Dr. Phil, but for real.
You stated there were times that Travis made you tear out pages of negative things that you said about him. Right before that, you said you wouldn't write negative things about Travis in your journal, which is correct.
They're both correct. The entry that he made me tear out was very detailed and a lot more, I was quoting him directly on a couple of things he had said. And when he discovered those, he made me, and my feelings. So I used to write things to purge. When he admonished me and reminded me of the secret, at that point I wrote less specific things. Sometimes I would just write about my emotions, and sometimes those were negative. But writing about suicidal thoughts, for example, helped me process it. And getting it down on paper helped it get it out of me, I felt like. So when it came to Travis, I would be less specific. Like I would write, today Travis was obscenely mean to me, but I wouldn't go into detail about what that meant. I just remember that was a really bad day, so I would write something to that effect.
Did she
Can
not
we
just say
see other
nobody read her journal
examples
for
of
her
when you
knowledge?
called men that you did not have romantic interests in hottie biscotti? Are there text messages, emails, or instant messages?
They just wanted the judge to say that.
Probably, well, none that I've seen that have been recovered, but there would be some in text messages. I texted Daryl a lot. I texted my little brother a lot.
Shown not what she's telling me.
Approach, please. Did you call any men you did not have romantic interests in hottie biscotti in text messages, emails, or instant messages?
Yes. Text messages, not the other.
In
two.
text messages?
Yes.
If you were not going to marry Travis because of the January 21, 2008 and January 22, 2008 events, why stay with him at all?
It was difficult to stay away from him. It was difficult to break away from him. And when he would invite me over, it was very hard to say no. He was persuasive, and he still had an effect on me that when I came over, when he was in a good mood, it made me feel good. And I enjoyed being with him during those times. And that's something I was familiar with.
Do you feel the guys in your life cheated on you because you were controlling?
I feel it was just the opposite. I feel that they cheated on me.
They were throwing so much shade. They said, did they cheat on you because you were too controlling?
Because I was too tolerant. I was very trusting, implicitly trusting, and very naive. And I gave them the freedom to be and do what they wanted when they wanted. And I think they took advantage of that.
Were you mad at Travis
You're about as
while you were
naive as I am a
stabbing him?
triathlete.
I don't recall fear being a prominent, I don't recall anger being a prominent.
Madam Judge, she previously indicated she didn't remember. She does remember. She should tell us.
I remember emotions, Judge.
All right, the question is, were you mad at Travis while you were stabbing him?
He remembers emotions.
I don't remember being angry that day. I remember being terrified.
Objection, not responsive. No, she's stabbing him.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I think you've answered the question. How is it that you remember so many of your sexual encounters, including your ex-boyfriends, but you do not remember stabbing Travis and dragging his body?
It's really not funny, but this jury is on point. Like, they are just like a weeping willow tree of shade. And it is just no matter where she goes, the sun just goes the opposite way, and that's where the shade is. She just cannot escape the shade.
Well, as far as what happened on June 4th, I don't know how the mind works necessarily, but I know that that was the most traumatic experience of my life. And outside of those
You don't
blanks and the ones that I've mentioned as far as that were alcohol related when I was a teenager, I don't have other blackouts that I can recall, just when memories get foggy, when I get stressful. I think actually that I have a very good memory. I can remember tons of things. But when I'm under a stressful situation, it's as if my mind, if you can imagine a computer that freezes, it's turned on, but it's not functioning, and you can hit the keys, but nothing's happening. Just like the sound waves are hitting my ears, but the brain is not computing. It's kind of like that. So I don't black out during those times, but my mind is not processing the English words that are being said to me, or he screamed at me, or whichever.
During cross-examination, you were asked if you were crying when you stabbed Travis, and you said no. How do you know that if you had a memory gap at that time?
I think that was misunderstood. I said, I don't know. And I know I was probably crying when I said that, and maybe I didn't speak up clearly enough, but I said, I don't know, not no.
You stated you bought a gun to commit suicide, but never ended up doing it. What stopped you from doing so?
I was going to wait until I left Wairika and got to the Salinas or Monterey area so that it didn't happen right in my family's own backyard, so to speak. And I was
No, but
leaving
you brought
for
all
that
this to their front
area
doorstep.
the morning I was arrested, actually.
You stated you would not want kids with Travis because you would be worried about them. If that is the case, why did you tell Leslie you couldn't wait until your kids and Travis's kids could play together at future PPL events?
Yes.
I wanted Travis to be viewed in a positive light, and
Oh my gosh.
I know that
The
he wanted to
martyr.
be viewed in a positive light. I didn't want to de-edify him, especially not at the moment that I made those statements. And also, prior to June 4th, that was a hope of mine. It wasn't that I couldn't wait, it's just that sometimes PPL events would be family oriented, and I would hope that our families would be able to
Pixar
be cordial and
didn't
kind.
happen.
Not that we would be ultimately very close, but just that was a hope of mine, that we could someday be happy for each other in our respective marriages. And I didn't want to say anything bad about him.
A lot of your answers to the questions you were asked made it seem like you put Travis's feelings and priorities before your own. If that were true, why didn't you call for help after you shot Travis?
Oh, jeez.
Usually his
I don't
priorities
remember.
went before mine when it was something that he wanted.
He didn't want.
When the gun
be
went off,
shot.
I didn't know that I had shot him. I thought it hit a wall.
How
So
do you
as far
not-
as not calling 911, immediately after it wasn't an option, he lunged at me and we fell and wrestled there for a quick second before I broke away. And then as far as not calling 911, like I said, I can't really explain my state of mind following immediately following. And after that, it was basically fear-based as far as not calling any authority or telling any authority at all.
Why did you
All right,
decide to
Jody,
tell the
what do you
truth
have to
2
say to
years
that?
after the killing?
It's the Jody
It
Show.
took 2 years
Yay!
because I was very deeply ashamed of what had happened. I used to consider people who were violent in any form to be somewhat unevolved. That's how I looked at it. And now I was that kind of person to a very extreme degree. And I was horrified with myself and very ashamed. And it wasn't the kind of person that I was trying to portray to the world, as well as who I even believed I ever could be, inside or out. However, as time went on and I evolve and I mature and I gain more perspective as things get farther away, there were a lot of people that reached out to me and offered support because they believed in my stupid story. And I felt really bad for that because they were there for me and they wanted to offer moral support. And I felt fraudulent the more things, the farther along things got. At first it was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be dead soon, so I won't have to answer that. And then it started off as a secret that I wanted to take to my grave with me, and then it became one that I didn't want to keep anymore. So it wasn't an overnight decision. It was a very gradual process, and I felt fraudulent. You start just feeling, I mean, obviously I did from the beginning, but it becomes
You're not wrong.
a really yucky feeling inside. It doesn't feel good.
Ma'am, you killed somebody. Overkill. You use both gun and knife, which is not unheard of, but very rarely heard of. And you describe the feeling inside as yucky? I feel yucky if I get frustrated with my kids a little too soon or quickly. That's yucky. You're beyond. Like that is not an accurate depiction. However, it does tell me just how little you cared about the life of somebody you said you cared about. Rant
What
now.
made you change your mind and tell everyone about Travis's secret, the child picture?
Well, the first time I decided to was when I was talking to a psychologist from California.
He's oblivious.
And we were exploring dynamics of our relationship. And it took me a long time, but several months beyond that, I told other people. It became, I had made a promise to him that I would never say anything. And so he made a promise that he would get help.
You sit on a throne
I wanted
of
to keep my
lies.
promise. I didn't want to throw mud on him. He was.
Nope.
It's not like he was a threat, that anything was going to happen to any children at this point. Why even go there? Why tell anyone? But it was such a huge part of our relationship, and that everything thereafter changed, everything. So when I realized that, in retrospect, I don't think he ever upheld his end of the bargain, I felt less obligated to keep that secret. And also, it changed everything in our relationship. So leaving that element out.
Could it be?
It's like a huge missing piece of the puzzle of how things ultimately evolved the way they did.
You said you were sick to your stomach when you saw Travis with child pictures. So why did you sleep with him again?
Well, after throwing up a few times that day, I wanted to talk to him and give him a chance to explain what was going on. So
What is there to explain? if you were the queen of qualifications or qualifiers, why didn't you say it wasn't more than one picture, it was just one? Like you have a couple of times. Why'd you just brush past that this time? And though, you know what? I don't know why I'm arguing.
We ended up getting together later on after FHE, much later in the evening. And he gave me a tearful explanation, and I felt more sympathetic toward him than disgusted at that point because of how he explained it to me.
But you still felt
Would you
disgusted.
classify your relationship with Travis Alexander as a love-hate relationship?
It certainly had all the motions of a love-hate relationship,
You loved him, he hated you.
but I never felt that I hated Travis. I screamed
Nobody
that
asked
out
if
one
you hated
time
him.
when he wasn't present, after a really mean phone call. But I never felt hatred toward Travis, although we had those ups and downs that were pretty extreme.
On June 4, 2008, after you got up and ran toward the closet, is it possible that Travis picked up the camera on the bathroom floor and moved it?
Yeah, and to
I don't
clarify, I
remember.
didn't run toward the closet. I ran down the hall right after I rolled away from him.
But you ran to
that's
the
completely
closet,
possible, and
toward the
that's
closet.
an idea I've entertained also, but I didn't see anything. I just ran, and I didn't look back.
Could that also explain the delay in his arrival and his anger in the closet at the door threshold?
Would that be the camera related?
Yes.
It certainly could. The delay, maybe the floor was wet and I don't know if it just the traction, but
Well, you remember an awful
with
lot
him getting down the hallway, I don't know. But
about this
the
beta
camera, I don't even remember how the camera ended up where it did. So I don't know if he picked it up and inspected it or how it got kicked around or if it got kicked around, that kind of thing.
Given that there are guiding principles such as the law of attraction and practices like passing down journals to future generations, do you feel the Mormon religion encourages burying the truth about issues that may be considered embarrassing?
Okay, one moment. Before you start commenting, let's avoid answering this question. Yeah? We're not going to have a religious debate here. I'm not saying you will. You are 105 of my best friends. But I don't want to offend anybody. We don't know who's watching, chat, reading, or who's going to see the replay. I have my own personal opinions, but I like to keep it neutral. So let's let Jodi answer this question, and then we're going to move on to the next one.
Encourages bearing the truth?
Yes.
Well, to be clear, the law of attraction and the Mormon Church are two separate animals. They intertwine in some ways with certain scripture, but they are completely separate. In Mormonism, being a religion, I felt that there was an unspoken undercurrent in the church, which puts pressure on members to present a squeaky clean image. However, I know that's not official church policy, even though that you feel that pressure when you're in the church. My understanding of official church policy is if you have transgressed in any way, no matter how embarrassing, if it's a serious transgression, it's dealt with internally in the church, internally inside, but also with a church authority such as your bishop or any other appropriate church authority. The law of attraction, the way I embraced it 4 or 5 years ago, I was in denial. Like, I didn't want to deal with the negative things I was going through because I felt that by dealing with them, I would then be focusing on them and then that would attract more of them rather than dealing with them in a healthy way to eradicate them. So I kind of lost track of the question. I'm
The
sorry.
question was, do you feel the Mormon religion encourages burying the truth about issues
I
that may be
appreciate it.
considered embarrassing?
The Mormon religion, yes. You are encouraged always to tell the truth, no matter how bad it is. That doesn't mean broadcasting it, but
That's not
going through the appropriate
question.
channels for
Jody, that's not
repentance.
the question.
Can you give a few
Hey.
examples of what might be considered negative other than those already discussed?
Negative experiences?
Just says negative. I think it's in connection with your journals.
Well, I don't know that that means specifically to me, but other than the violating the law of chastity or violence, that kind of thing, words that you speak. There's doctrine in the church which says that every word that flows from our mouth, we will be held accountable for those words one day. So
What is this answer? Objection relevance.
that's an example of something negative.
One. Objection relevance.
I know some Mormons that drink. That's an example of something negative. I know gay Mormons and homosexuality is prohibited in the church. That's something the church considers negative. It's not my philosophy. There
Except
are things
you totally
to that effect.
said
I mean,
somebody
plenty
sounded
of things
gay.
that go on and on. So, I mean, I guess there would be an example as far as the homosexuality goes, because Travis wanted to have a threesome with another woman. And I wasn't, I mean, I'm not gay, but it was something I was contemplating going along with. So that obviously, in addition to the sexual sin, depending on what interaction I may or may not have had with that woman, could also be a violation of another law in that regard.
How do you determine when you will tell the truth and when you will not tell the truth? What are the determining factors?
Don't wish that evil on me. Don't wish it.
Anything that related back to my involvement in Travis's death or de-edifying him in any way,
De-edify.
I covered up.
De-edify.
I attempted to cover up. So the lies that I told after all of this happened were directly related to those two main themes.
When did you find Travis's gun?
It would have been October, November, sometime in the fall. It was before Christmas, 2007. I know it was before Christmas. I don't remember the exact time in the fall.
Was it kept loaded in the closet?
He told me it was not loaded.
Objection, hearsay. It's out.
Okay.
You told me what.
Overruled.
He assured me it wasn't loaded because
Objection now, the hearsay.
Oh, I'm
Sustained.
sorry.
Sustained.
Oh, okay. Should I?
Wait for another question.
Okay.
Today, March 5, 2013, you stated before lunch that you think you fill the car up first. If you did have the third gas can, as we saw in several hypothetical situations after lunch, do you see it possible to put 8.301 gallons of gas in the car, exhibit number 237.011, and then 9.59 gallons and 2.774 gallons for a total of 12.368 gallons in the remaining 3 gas cans? Exhibits 237.011, 237.012, and 237.013.
That
Okay, that was a
juror.
lot of elements to that question. So first, I didn't have 3 gas cans.
Objection, no response.
did.
She was asking if it was possible, assuming she had 3 gas cans.
Overruled. You may continue.
I didn't have 3 gas cans. I believe
But
we
you
were
did.
discussing a hypothetical if I had 3 gas cans. no, it wouldn't make sense to put only 2 gallons and change into one gas can while filling up the others. And as far as whether I think I filled up the car first or not, I honestly don't know what came first. I do remember having a fear of filling the gas can, overfilling them, because I didn't want overflow because it's a highly flammable substance. So I remember that, so I can't say that I filled them all the way to their maximum
In case
capacity
you were
or not.
wondering, gas is
But
highly
I wouldn't have
flammable,
only
y'all.
put 2 gallons in one if I'd filled up 2 more. I only had 2 anyway. So there were never 3 on that trip when I pulled out of Salinas.
You initially testified that sex was a way for Travis to relieve stress, and later testified it was a way for him to relieve anger, which is correct.
Both are correct. Anger was stressful, and he had the term de-stress, and sex was a way to de-stress. And it seemed like after he climaxed that he felt a lot more calm.
How do you know that?
Based on his demeanor and conversations we've had regarding that and requests that he's made specifically to that, of that nature, and the term de-stress.
Would a screwdriver be required to take off the license plates?
I heard,
Sustained.
okay,
Would a screwdriver be required to take off the license plates?
I believe so, because Ryan had to borrow a screwdriver from,
Sustained. Did you find it strange that only your license plate was messed with in that parking lot?
I don't know that only my license plate was messed with.
If you were driving to a place you had never been before, meaning Utah, why wouldn't you map out different towns that would have gas stations or rest stations?
I did go to MapQuest to determine the number of hours it might take. And
Well, you
I
went to
printed out
MapQuest. That's
MapQuest
your first
directions.
problem.
And I also printed out MapQuest directions.
Y'all, was MapQuest that big in 2008? I don't remember it being big in 2008. Who uses MapQuest? Mathematician or scientist? Probably nuclear engineer. Sounds like something that my father-in-law would ask.
From San Diego to West Jordan, as well as Pasadena or Los Angeles, whichever area, to West Jordan. I wouldn't know what website to even visit. I guess I could have gone to Google and just typed in where are the gas stations on I-5 to bring all that up.
I wasn't using it.
I'm not aware of a website that specifically shows those things. It's for that purpose. I only knew of MapQuest, and I printed directions that way because I had relied on my GPS all these years, but I wasn't going to be taking that car with the GPS, which usually just guided me and could tell me where the gas stations were.
Did you ever see a doctor for your memory issues?
I don't believe that I have memory issues that are really persistent. I just have trouble processing things under stressful circumstances. And June 4th is kind of in a class of its own. Outside of those things, I feel like I have a really good memory, and I never thought to seek medical help or any kind of professional help for that.
If you were scared of Travis's anger and violence, why would you go upstairs when he was banging his head, knowing he was already mad?
Well, Travis had never, when I didn't know he was banging his head, I just didn't know what this steady noise was. It was kind of just a pounding, not incredibly loud, but loud enough to hear from downstairs. And
That's incredibly loud.
two, he had never been violent with me prior to that, except, it wasn't violent. The only time he'd been physical was when he grabbed my wrist at the convention. So I didn't really fear physical harm from him at that point in time.
Sure can't.
Did Travis ever tell you he kept
Not
his
with where
gun
this
loaded?
trial's played from.
He told me of one time that he considered loading it, but he assured me that it was not loaded.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
If you did not think the gun was loaded, why chance grabbing a gun that may not be loaded instead of just running outside?
I grabbed the gun not because I intended to shoot him. I grabbed the gun because my thought is that if a gun is pointed, you stop. Whether it's loaded or not, I've always been taught you don't point guns at people, period, just as a safety precaution. So I can only imagine what I would do in that situation. If a gun were pointed at me, I would stop. And I was hoping that it would have that effect on him.
You stated that when you walked out of Starbucks, you did not notice anything wrong with the back of the car. How is it that the back license plate ended upside down?
I didn't see anyone turning my license plate upside down, nor did I notice the license plate when I walked out. What I noticed is kids skating away from my car. It's possible that it could have happened.
Overruled.
Convenient.
It's possible that it could have happened at any point during my trip. I could have even rented the car that way and never noticed. But
that's not
I believe.
Sustained. Why did you plan on going to see John Dixon when you were on your way to Utah to see Ryan?
John Dixon was a friend. Although there was somewhat of an interest there, it was nothing that I ever let grow because he wasn't a church member. So it would be kind of a poor investment of my heart to get attached to somebody who was not a member of the church. What I was going down there for is he had a friend who either owned a gallery or ran a gallery where he hung some of the greats such as Van Gogh and Monet. And when I told him I painted, he said, we can make a space in this gallery for you. I can hang it right next to.
Wait, hold on. I was distracted. Can we please go back for a second? She did not.
I believe.
Sustained. Why did you plan on going to see John Dixon when you were on your way to Utah to see Ryan?
John Dixon was a friend. Although there was somewhat of an interest there, it was nothing that I ever let grow because he wasn't a church member. So it would be kind of a poor investment of my heart to get attached to somebody who was not a member of the church. What I was going down there for is he had a friend who either owned a gallery or ran a gallery where he hung some of the greats such as Van Gogh and Monet. And when I told him I painted, he said, we can make a space in this gallery for you. I can hang it right next to a Monet or Van Gogh. It sounded like a very exciting thing for me because one of my goals at that time was to get my paintings into galleries.
How many men were you willing to be in?
You can't go from having paintings in no galleries to paintings next to Van Gogh. That's not how this works. On top of that, you have to be good with politics. You might be a narcissistic sociopath. However, I can't believe she just said that under
Involved with at the same time?
Well, it depends on the level of intimacy. As far as a boyfriend, I have one boyfriend at a time. An intimate partner, one at a time. In the church, you are encouraged to go on.
Objection, non-responsive.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, counsel.
Objection, non-responsive. She's already indicated one, and then she wants to talk about the church.
It varies.
She was explaining her answer and her beliefs about dating, as the question called for.
Overruled, you may continue.
In the church, you're encouraged to date around and find somebody that you might be compatible with and not to get too serious with somebody that you don't think you would be very compatible with. So Mormons are encouraged to go on group dates and not spend too much time together with only one person unless you are certain that you're going to start getting serious with that person.
Did you ever seek medical help for your mental condition?
I'm not sure what mental condition that refers
The
to.
answer is yes.
But
Have you ever taken medication for your memory issue?
no,
Did you ever tell anyone about your condition prior to the killing?
I don't really think I had much of a condition prior to the killing. I
course
mean,
not.
I have ADD, I think, because I space out, but I don't.
She was asked if she told somebody about it, not what.
Sustained.
Okay.
You told us that you were not able to make out the license plate leaning against the curb in front of your car because you are nearsighted and did not get glasses until 2010. What is your prescription in each eye?
My understanding is that my prescription is -2.5 and -2.25.
He remembers that.
Is there anyone who saw you shaking during a fight with Travis?
Dan saw me visibly upset after. But I don't think anybody saw us fighting during, at least to the level of fights where it would cause me to shake.
Do any of your journal entries or any other items discuss you shaking or blacking out or getting scrambled?
Possibly allusions to getting scrambled, but I had not blacked out. Except, like I said, those 2 times when they were alcohol induced. One time I did induce blacking out with some friends. That was earlier than that, and that was a one-time incident. But I didn't journal blacking out because there were no incidents during those times that I was journaling. And shaking, I mean, I shook when I wrote, but I didn't write that I was shaking. So probably only when I got scrambled. There were times when I would write things.
You claim to have memory lapses or gaps during times of stress, such as when you are being yelled at or grilled. How is it that you have such vivid and specific memories of violence and yelling by Travis such a long time ago, if this is the case?
With the violence, it's not that I have to process the English language. It's more, I feel those things. I know he broke my finger because it's still broken, or it's healed, but it's crooked. I know he choked me out because I woke up from being unconscious. As far as him yelling, I know he's yelling because there's a loud volume and it has an effect on me. I don't know all the things he said. For example, the night he said disparaging things about my grandfather and my brother. Those stand out. But that's all I can remember of a 3-hour session of him screaming at me and before I was able to leave. So many things were said, mean things, and I didn't process them all. Some I wrote down, and that's when he made me tear them out. So I don't.
Memory problem.
I didn't write them after that.
Wow. Day 1 of jury questions over, moving on to day 2. And by that, I mean, we're going to start that on Monday. It is 12:11. I just wanted to finish up that video because we were almost done. Thank you all so much for sticking around tonight on a Friday night. I appreciate you a lot. So thanks for showing up for jury duty. You all are awesome. First off, you put up with me, but you also offer awesome commentary, both funny and insightful, and I appreciate you greatly. So that being said, yes, jurors understand the assignment, both those jurors and you jurors. So on that note, we're going to let the mods go to bed and everybody else go to bed, and me too. So thanks again for being here. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself and take care of your friends and family. And don't forget to smile. And as Pantoufle says, and she just did, don't let anyone dull your sparkle. I like that a lot. I'm not going to steal it, but I was going to say it tonight, and I'm glad you did too. I'll see you guys later. Court is adjourned. Bye.